The tiny cry pierced through the morning silence like a knife. Maya's hands trembled as she stared down at the pink bundle tucked behind the dumpster. A newborn baby girl wrapped in an expensive silk blanket, alone and abandoned in the cold alley. The child couldn't have been more than a few days old. Maya, a homeless 17-year-old who had been sleeping in that very alley, knew she had only seconds to decide. Should she pick up this baby and change both their lives forever, or walk away like she had learned to do with so many other problems in her hard life? The baby's cries grew louder, more desperate. Maya's heart pounded in her chest. She had barely enough food to feed herself, no money, no home, no family. How could she possibly help this innocent child? But as she looked into those tiny, helpless eyes, something inside her shifted. She couldn't walk away. She wouldn't. Maya reached down with shaking hands and lifted the baby into her arms, not knowing that this single moment of courage would set off a chain of events that would expose dark secrets, challenge a powerful millionaire family, and prove that sometimes the bravest hearts beat in the most unexpected places. But to understand how Maya ended up in that alley on that cold Tuesday morning, we need to go back 3 weeks earlier, to when her life had fallen apart completely. Maya used to have a home. It wasn't much, just a small apartment she shared with her grandmother, Rosa, but it was filled with love and warmth. Her grandmother had raised her since she was 5 years old, after Maya's parents died in a car accident. Rosa worked as a cleaning lady at several office buildings downtown, and though they never had much money, they always had each other. Rosa would come home tired every night, but she always had a smile for Maya and a story to tell over their simple dinner. Maya remembered those evenings so clearly. Her grandmother would sit in the old yellow chair by the window, her feet soaking in warm water, and she would tell Maya about the people she met during her day. Rosa had a special way of seeing the good in everyone, even the rude businessman who complained about his trash can placement, or the security guard who never said thank you. Everyone is fighting a battle we know nothing about, Rosa would say, her kind eyes crinkling at the corners. That's why we must always choose kindness, Maya. Always. Those words echoed in Maya's mind now as she thought about her grandmother. 3 weeks ago, Rosa had collapsed at work. The doctors said it was her heart, weakened by years of hard work and stress. She was rushed to the hospital, and Maya remembered running through those white corridors, her shoes squeaking on the polished floors, desperate to reach her grandmother's room. When she finally got there, Rosa was lying in the hospital bed, looking so small and fragile, surrounded by beeping machines and tubes. Rosa had held Maya's hand with her thin, work-worn fingers. "My sweet girl," she had whispered, her voice barely audible. "Remember what I taught you. Be kind. Be brave. Take care of yourself." Those were the last words Rosa ever spoke to Maya. She died that night, leaving Maya utterly alone in the world at just 17 years old. We share powerful stories that uncover hidden truths and challenge perspectives. Subscribe to stay updated, share to keep others safe, and comment where you're watching from. The next few days had passed in a blur of grief and confusion. Maya discovered that her grandmother had been behind on rent for 3 months, using all her money to make sure Maya had food and clothes for school. Without Rosa's income, Maya couldn't pay the rent. The landlord, a stern man with cold eyes, gave her 1 week to leave. Maya had tried to explain, tried to ask for more time, but he wouldn't listen. "Business is business," he said, turning away from her tears. With nowhere to go and no relatives to call, Maya found herself on the streets with just a backpack full of clothes, her grandmother's yellow shawl, and $63 in her pocket. She tried to stay at a friend's house for a few days, but the friend's parents said they couldn't take her in permanently. She tried calling social services, but they said she would be placed in the system, probably in a group home far away, and she would have to leave her school, her neighborhood, everything familiar. Maya was scared of that unknown future, so she ran. That's how she ended up sleeping in alleys and doorways, trying to stay invisible, trying to survive. She would wash up in public restroom sinks, eat whatever cheap food she could afford from corner stores, and spend her days sitting in the public library where it was warm and safe. At night, she would find a quiet spot to sleep, always alert, always afraid. The alley behind Chen's restaurant had become her regular spot. Mr. Chen, the owner, was a kind older man who reminded Maya a little of her grandmother. He never chased her away, and sometimes he would leave a container of leftover rice or noodles by the back door, pretending he hadn't noticed her there. Maya was grateful for these small mercies, these tiny moments of kindness in her harsh new world. She had been sleeping in that alley for 5 days when everything changed. That Tuesday morning started like any other. Maya woke up at dawn, her body stiff and cold from sleeping on cardboard behind the dumpster. She folded up her makeshift bed, washed her face with water from her bottle, and was about to head to the library when she heard it. That cry. That tiny, desperate cry that seemed to come from nowhere and everywhere at once. At first, Maya thought she was imagining it. Maybe she was still half asleep, or maybe hunger was making her hear things. But the cry came again, louder this time, more urgent. Maya looked around the empty alley, her heart starting to race. The sound was coming from behind the dumpster, from the exact spot where she had just been sleeping. She walked slowly toward the sound, almost afraid of what she might find. And that's when she saw it. Behind the large green dumpster, tucked into a shadowy corner, was a baby carrier. Expensive-looking baby carrier made of smooth gray fabric with chrome handles. And inside that carrier, wrapped in a silk blanket that probably cost more than Maya had seen in months, was a tiny newborn baby girl, her face red from crying, her little fists waving in the air. Maya's mind raced. Who would leave a baby here? Why? Where were the parents? She looked up and down the alley, but it was completely empty. The sun was just starting to rise, painting the sky in shades of pink and orange, but the alley was still deep in shadow. Nobody was around. Nobody except Maya and this abandoned baby. The baby's cries were growing more desperate, more frightened. Maya knew that sound. It was the sound of hunger, of discomfort, of a tiny person who needed help right now. Despite her own situation, despite having nothing to give, Maya couldn't just leave this child here. Her grandmother's voice echoed in her mind. Be kind. Be brave. With trembling hands, Maya picked up the baby carrier. It was heavier than she expected. The baby quieted for just a moment as the carrier moved, her large blue eyes staring up at Maya with an expression that seemed far too wise for someone so small. Then the crying started again, even louder than before. Maya's heart was pounding so hard she thought it might burst from her chest. What was she supposed to do? She had no phone to call for help, no money to buy baby supplies, nowhere to take this child to keep her safe and warm. But she couldn't just leave her here. Someone might not find her for hours. Something terrible could happen. It's okay, Maya whispered to the baby, her voice shaking. It's going to be okay. I've got you. She looked down at the baby carrier more carefully now, searching for any clue about who this child belonged to. That's when she noticed the blanket wasn't just expensive silk. It had a monogram embroidered in the corner in elegant gold thread. The letters were fancy and curling, but Maya could make them out clearly. VW. VW. Those initials meant nothing to Maya, but they meant something to someone. This blanket was custom-made, probably very expensive. And the baby herself was dressed in a pristine white onesie that looked brand new, with tiny pearl buttons down the front. Her little hat matched perfectly. Everything about this baby spoke of wealth, of a family with money. So why was she abandoned in an alley? Maya noticed something else tucked into the side of the carrier. An envelope. A thick, cream-colored envelope made of expensive paper. Maya's hands shook as she pulled it out and turned it over. On the front, written in elegant handwriting, were the words, "For whoever finds her, please help my daughter." Maya's breath caught in her throat. Should she open it? Was it meant for her? She looked around the alley again, half expecting someone to jump out and explain this bizarre situation. But the alley remained empty except for the distant sound of traffic beginning to pick up on the main street. The baby was crying harder now, her face turning an alarming shade of red. Maya knew she had to make a decision, and she had to make it fast. She carefully opened the envelope and pulled out a folded letter. The paper inside was thick and expensive, matching the envelope. Maya's eyes scanned the words, and with each line she read, her eyes grew wider with shock and fear. To whoever finds my daughter. The letter began in that same elegant handwriting. I am leaving her in your care because I have no choice. My name is Victoria Whitmore. My husband, Richard Whitmore, does not know about this baby. He cannot know. Our family has expectations, appearances to maintain, and this child does not fit into those plans. I gave birth to her 3 days ago in secret, away from the prying eyes of our social circle. Maya's hands trembled so badly she almost dropped the letter. Whitmore. She knew that name. Everyone in the city knew that name. Richard Whitmore was one of the richest men in the entire state, a real estate developer who owned half the buildings downtown. His face was on billboards, in newspapers, on the news. The Whitmores lived in a mansion in the hills, the kind of place that had its own name and was featured in magazines about wealthy people. The letter continued, and Maya forced herself to keep reading, even though every word made her more frightened. I cannot keep her. I will not keep her. I am leaving her here with this carrier, this blanket, and $20,000 in cash. The money is hidden in the bottom compartment of the carrier. Take it. Use it to care for her or keep it for yourself and give her to the authorities. I do not care what you do, as long as she disappears from my life. Do not try to find me. Do not contact the Whitmore family. If you do, I will deny everything. I have resources and lawyers who will make sure you are the one who suffers, not me. This letter will be destroyed after you read it. There is no proof I was ever here. Forget you ever saw me. Forget this ever happened. The letter was not signed, but at the bottom, pressed into the paper like a seal, was a small gold emblem. It looked like a family crest, with the initials VW in the center, surrounded by ornate designs. Maya's mind was spinning. $20,000? Hidden in the carrier? She looked down at the baby, who was still crying, and then at the carrier itself. She hadn't noticed before, but there was indeed a zipper along the bottom. With shaking fingers, Maya unzipped it, and her breath caught in her throat. Stacks of $100 bills were packed neatly inside the hidden compartment, bound together with paper bands. Maya had never seen so much money in her entire life. Her first instinct was to zip it back up immediately, to pretend she hadn't seen it. This was too much. This was dangerous. This was way beyond anything she could handle. But the baby's cries pulled her back to reality. This wasn't about money. This wasn't about the Whitmores or their secrets. This was about a 3-day-old baby girl who had been abandoned in an alley and needed help right now. Maya looked around frantically. The sun was getting higher now. Soon, people would start coming to work at the restaurant. Mr. Chun might come out the back door. Someone might see her with this baby, with this carrier full of money, and jump to all the wrong conclusions. She had to move. She had to think. Her first thought was to go straight to the police. That would be the right thing to do, wouldn't it? But as soon as that thought formed, doubt crept in. The letter had been clear. Victoria Whitmore had resources, lawyers, power. If Maya went to the police with a wild story about a millionaire's wife abandoning her baby in an alley, who would believe her? Maya was a homeless teenager with no family, no proof, no credibility. The Whitmores could make her look like a kidnapper, a thief, or worse. They could make her disappear. And even if the police did believe her, what then? The baby would be taken away, put into the system. Maybe she would be given back to Victoria Whitmore, to a mother who didn't want her, who had dumped her in an alley like trash. The thought made Maya feel sick. But what other choice did she have? She couldn't take care of a baby. She couldn't even take care of herself. She was living in an alley, for heaven's sake. She had no home, no job, no resources except for the $63 in her pocket and now, apparently $20,000 in blood money that she was terrified to touch. The baby's crying was becoming weaker now, more of a whimper than a wail. That scared Maya even more than the loud crying had. Was the baby getting tired? Or was something wrong? How long had she been out here before Maya found her? Was she cold? Hungry? Sick? Okay, Maya whispered, more to herself than to the baby. Okay. Think, Maya. Think. She made a decision. She would take the baby somewhere safe and warm first. Then she would figure out what to do next. One step at a time, just like her grandmother had always taught her when problems seemed too big to handle. Maya carefully picked up the carrier, slipping her arms through the handles so she could carry it like a bag. The baby's whimpering quieted a little at the movement, her tiny body seeming to relax slightly. Maya grabbed her backpack with her other hand and started walking quickly out of the alley, her heart hammering against her ribs with every step. She kept her head down as she walked, trying to look purposeful, like she had every right to be carrying a newborn baby through the streets at 7 in the morning. A few early morning commuters passed her, but nobody gave her a second glance. In a big city, people were used to minding their own business. Maya headed toward the public library, but then realized it wouldn't open for another 2 hours. She needed somewhere to go now, somewhere she could sit and think and figure out her next move. Her eyes landed on St. Catherine's Church, a small stone building tucked between 2 larger buildings on the corner of 5th and Main. The church was always open, her grandmother had told her once. Churches are supposed to be sanctuaries, Rosa had said, places where anyone can come when they need help. Maya climbed the stone steps and pushed open the heavy wooden door. The inside of the church was quiet and dim, lit only by rows of candles flickering at the front and the colored light streaming through stained glass windows. It was warm, thank goodness. Maya could feel the heat wrapping around her like a blanket after the cold morning air. She slipped into a pew near the back, setting the carrier down gently beside her. The baby had stopped crying now, her eyes closing in exhaustion. Maya stared at her tiny face, at her perfect little nose and delicate eyelashes, and felt a wave of emotion so strong it nearly knocked her over. This was someone's child. This was a human being, brand new to the world, and she had already been abandoned by the person who should have loved her most. "Count, what am I going to do with you?" Maya whispered. At that moment, she heard footsteps echoing through the church. Maya's head snapped up, her body tensing, ready to run if necessary. But it was just an older woman in a simple gray dress, carrying a bucket and cleaning supplies. The woman looked up and saw Maya, and her expression softened immediately. "Good morning, child," the woman said gently. She had a kind face with deep smile lines and warm brown eyes. "You're here early. Are you all right?" Maya opened her mouth to say she was fine, that everything was okay, but instead, to her horror, she burst into tears. All the fear and stress and grief from the past 3 weeks came pouring out in great, gasping sobs. The woman quickly set down her bucket and hurried over, sliding into the pew beside Maya. If you're enjoying this story, please subscribe to the channel. Your support keeps us motivated and reminds us that our stories are making a difference in people's lives. There, the woman said, putting a gentle arm around Maya's shaking shoulders. "It's all right, sweetheart. Whatever it is, it's going to be all right." "No," Maya managed to choke out between sobs. "No, it's not. Nothing is all right. My grandmother died, and I lost my home, and now there's this baby, and I don't know what to do, and—" "A baby?" the woman interrupted, her eyes widening as she noticed the carrier for the first time. She leaned over to look at the sleeping infant and gasped, "Oh my stars! Where did you get a baby?" Maya wiped her eyes with the back of her hand, trying to calm down enough to speak. "I found her, this morning, behind a dumpster in an alley. Someone left her there with a note." The woman's hand flew to her mouth. "Jesus, Mary, and Joseph left her? Like abandoned her?" Maya nodded miserably. "I don't know what to do. The note said not to contact anyone, said there would be trouble if I did, but I can't take care of a baby. I can barely take care of myself. But I couldn't just leave her there. I couldn't." The woman was quiet for a moment, studying Maya's face with those kind, wise eyes. Then she said, "What's your name, child?" "Maya." "Maya, that's a beautiful name. I'm Agnes. I clean here at the church, and I help Father Michael with various things." Agnes reached over and gently adjusted the blanket around the sleeping baby. "You did the right thing, Maya. You saved this little one's life. That took real courage." "But what do I do now?" Maya asked desperately. "I'm homeless, Agnes. I have nowhere to go. I can't keep her, but I'm scared to call the police because—" She stopped, unsure how much to reveal about the letter and the money and the Whitmores. Agnes seemed to understand without Maya having to explain everything. "There are complicated circumstances involved," she said. "It wasn't a question." Maya nodded. Agnes stood up slowly, her knees creaking. "Wait here. Don't move. I'm going to get Father Michael. He'll know what to do. He's helped people in difficult situations before. We can trust him." Before Maya could protest, Agnes had hurried off toward the back of the church, her footsteps echoing through the empty space. Maya sat there in the pew, her heart racing again. Had she just made a terrible mistake? Could she trust these people? Could she trust anyone? The baby stirred in her carrier and made a small sound. Not quite a cry, but close to it. Maya reached down and gently rocked the carrier back and forth, the way she had seen mothers do in movies. "Shoo," she whispered. "It's okay, little one. We're going to figure this out." A few minutes later, Agnes returned with a tall, thin man in his 60s wearing simple black clothes with a white collar. Father Michael had gray hair and kind eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses. He walked with a slight limp, leaning on a wooden cane. "Maya," he said softly, sitting down in the pew in front of her and turning to face her. "Agnes told me a little about your situation. First, I want you to know that you are safe here. Whatever you tell me, whatever help you need, we will do our best to provide it. Do you understand?" Maya nodded, feeling tears threatening again. These people were being so kind, so willing to help without asking for anything in return. It reminded her of her grandmother. "Now," Father Michael continued, "tell me everything, from the beginning, and don't worry, we'll figure this out together." So Maya told them everything. About her grandmother's death, about losing her home, about living in the alley. She told them about finding the baby that morning and about the letter from Victoria Whitmore. She showed them the monogram blanket and the family crest emblem. She even told them about the money hidden in the carrier, her voice dropping to barely a whisper when she mentioned the amount. Father Michael listened to everything without interrupting, his expression grave. When Maya finished, he sat back and was quiet for a long moment, clearly thinking hard about what to do. "This is indeed a complicated situation," he finally said. "The Whitmore family is very powerful in this city, very powerful and very private. If what you've told me is true, and I believe it is, then Victoria Whitmore has committed a serious crime. Abandoning a child is illegal, no matter how much money you leave with them." "But she said she would deny everything," Maya said. "She said she has lawyers who would make me the one in trouble, not her." "She's probably right about that," Father Michael admitted grimly. "If you went to the police with this story right now, it would be your word against a millionaire's, and you have no proof. The letter will likely disappear, if it hasn't already. The blanket and the carrier could have been stolen, they would claim. They could paint you as an opportunistic thief who kidnapped their child. So what do I do?" Maya felt panic rising in her chest again. "I can't keep her, but I can't give her back to someone who doesn't want her. And I can't take her to the police without ending up in jail myself." Agnes spoke up then. "What about the money, Father? The $20,000? Could Maya use that to care for the baby until we figure something out?" Father Michael shook his head slowly. "That money is dangerous, Agnes. If Maya is caught with that much cash and no way to explain where it came from, it will only make her look more suspicious. It could be seen as evidence of wrongdoing." The baby chose that moment to wake up fully and begin crying again, louder than before. Maya immediately started rocking the carrier again, but the crying only intensified. "She's probably hungry," Agnes said. "When did she last eat, do you think?" "I don't know," Maya said helplessly. "I found her maybe an hour ago. I don't know how long she was in that alley before that." Agnes stood up decisively. "Father, I'm going to run to the corner store and get some baby formula and bottles. This little one needs to eat right now, and then we can discuss the bigger problems." "Good idea," Father Michael agreed, pulling out his wallet and handing Agnes some bills. "Get whatever else you think a baby might need. Diapers, wipes, whatever." As Agnes hurried off, Father Michael turned back to Maya. "While we wait, tell me more about yourself. You said your grandmother passed away. Do you have any other family? Anywhere you could go? Maya shook her head. No one. It was just me and Grandma Rosa. My parents died when I was little. I don't have aunts or uncles or cousins, at least none that I know about. Grandma was my only family. And you've been on the streets for how long? 3 weeks. I tried to find somewhere to go, but everything required money I didn't have or help I couldn't get. I'm 17. Nobody wants to help a 17-year-old. They just want to put me in the system. Father Michael nodded sympathetically. The system is imperfect, I won't deny that. But Maya, you can't live on the streets. It's not safe, especially for a young woman alone. And now, with this baby depending on you, things have become much more complicated. I know, Maya whispered, looking down at the crying baby. I know it's all impossible. But I couldn't just leave her there, Father Michael. I couldn't walk away and pretend I never saw her. My grandmother always taught me to be kind, to help people when I could. Even when it's hard. Even when it doesn't make sense. Father Michael's stern expression softened into something like admiration. Your grandmother sounds like she was a wise woman, and she clearly raised you well. He was quiet for another moment, then seemed to come to a decision. Here's what we're going to do, at least for now. You and the baby will stay in the rectory, in one of our guest rooms. It's small but clean and warm. You'll be safe there while we figure out a longer-term plan. Really? Maya could hardly believe what she was hearing. You would do that for me? For us? The church is meant to be a sanctuary for those in need, Maya. And right now, you both certainly qualify. He held up a hand as Maya started to thank him profusely. But we need to be clear about something. This is a temporary solution while we work on a permanent one. We still need to figure out what to do about this baby, about the Whitmores, about all of it. We can't hide you both here forever. I understand, Maya said. But for now, just having somewhere safe to stay, somewhere warm, that's more than I could have hoped for. Agnes returned then, slightly out of breath, carrying 2 bags full of baby supplies. I got formula, bottles, diapers, wipes, some little clothes, and a few blankets, she announced, setting the bags down. The lady at the store was very helpful once I explained I needed emergency supplies for a newborn. Together, Agnes and Maya figured out how to mix the formula and prepare a bottle. The baby girl latched onto it immediately, drinking eagerly, her little hands waving in the air. Watching her eat, seeing the look of relief and contentment on that tiny face, Maya felt something shift inside her chest. A feeling she couldn't quite name. Protection, love, responsibility. She's beautiful, Agnes said softly, watching the baby drink. Does she have a name? Maya shook her head. The letter didn't say. Victoria Whitmore probably never gave her one. Every baby deserves a name, Father Michael said firmly. Even if it's temporary. What would you like to call her, Maya? Maya looked down at the baby in her arms, at those bright blue eyes that seemed to be studying her face as she drank. She thought about hope and new beginnings and second chances. She thought about her grandmother and all the love she had given Maya throughout her life. Hope, Maya said finally. I want to call her Hope. Hope, Agnes repeated, smiling. That's perfect. After Hope finished eating and had been changed into a clean diaper and fresh clothes from Agnes's shopping trip, Father Michael showed Maya to the guest room in the rectory. It was small, as he had warned, with just a bed, a dresser, and a chair. But to Maya, who had been sleeping on cardboard in an alley, it looked like a palace. There was a rail bed with clean sheets and pillows. There was a window with curtains. There was even a small bathroom attached to the room with a shower. Get some rest, Father Michael told her gently. You look exhausted, and the baby will need you to be strong. Agnes and I will be here if you need anything. We'll talk more later about what to do next. After he left, Maya laid Hope down in the center of the bed, surrounding her with pillows so she couldn't roll off, even though Hope was far too young to roll anywhere yet. Then Maya sat in the chair and just watched Hope sleep, her mind spinning with everything that had happened that morning. A few hours ago, she had been alone, homeless, with no future and no hope. Now she had a roof over her head and a baby depending on her. She should feel more overwhelmed, more scared, but instead she felt something else. Purpose. For the first time since her grandmother died, Maya felt like she had a reason to keep going, to fight, to survive. She thought about Victoria Whitmore, about what kind of woman could abandon her own baby like that. She thought about the Whitmore family, living in their mansion in the hills, with all their money and power and secrets. She thought about the letter and the warning not to contact them, not to cause trouble. But looking at baby Hope, sleeping so peacefully now, Maya felt something fierce and protective rise up inside her. This baby had been thrown away like garbage by people who should have treasured her. Well, Maya might not have money or power or a mansion in the hills, but she had something the Whitmores clearly lacked. She had a heart. She had courage. She had the willingness to fight for someone who couldn't fight for themselves. "I won't let them hurt you," Maya whispered to the sleeping baby. "I don't know how yet, but I'm going to make sure you're safe and loved. I promise." She sat there for a long time, watching Hope sleep, thinking about everything that needed to happen next. They couldn't hide in this church room forever. Eventually, decisions would have to be made. Eventually, the truth would have to come out. But for now, for this moment, they were both safe and warm and fed. That would have to be enough. As the afternoon sun streamed through the window, casting golden light across the small room, Maya finally allowed herself to close her eyes and rest. She was just drifting off to sleep when she heard voices outside the door. Raised voices. Angry voices. Maya's eyes snapped open. Her heart began to race. She crept quietly to the door and pressed her ear against it, trying to make out what was being said. It was Father Michael's voice, strained and worried. "I'm telling you, there's nothing to see here. This is a private residence. You have no right. We have every right." A man's cold voice interrupted. "We're looking for someone. A homeless girl, 17 years old. She may have stolen something very valuable. We have reason to believe she might have come to this church seeking shelter." Maya's blood turned to ice. They had found her. Already. But how? Who had talked? Who had seen her with Hope? "I don't know what you're talking about," Father Michael said firmly. "But even if such a girl had come here, this church is a sanctuary. I wouldn't turn anyone away, and I certainly wouldn't hand them over to strangers making accusations without proof." "Father," the cold voice said, and now it carried a hint of threat, "I suggest you cooperate. The Whitmore family takes theft very seriously. Very seriously indeed. Now, I'm going to ask you one more time. Is there a homeless girl here or not?" Maya looked back at Hope, still sleeping peacefully on the bed, completely unaware of the danger just outside the door. Her mind raced. Should she run? Should she grab Hope and try to escape through the window? Should she turn herself in and try to explain? Before she could decide, she heard heavy footsteps in the hallway, coming closer to her door. They were coming for her. They were coming for Hope, and Maya had nowhere left to run. The footsteps stopped right outside Maya's door. Her heart hammered so loudly she was sure whoever was on the other side could hear it. She pressed herself against the wall, her eyes darting between the door and baby Hope, still sleeping peacefully on the bed. Every muscle in her body was tensed, ready to grab Hope and run if the door burst open. "I'm telling you one final time." Father Michael's voice came through clearly now, loud and firm. "You will not search this rectory without a warrant. I don't care who you work for. This is church property, and these are private living quarters. If you take one more step toward that door, I will call the police myself and have you arrested for trespassing." There was a long, terrible silence. Maya held her breath. Then the cold voice spoke again, quieter now but somehow more menacing. "Very well, Father. We'll be back with the proper paperwork. But I suggest you think carefully about harboring a criminal. The Whitmore family has many friends in this city. Many powerful friends. It would be unfortunate if this church lost its tax-exempt status, or if certain building code violations were suddenly discovered. Do I make myself clear?" "Perfectly clear," Father Michael replied, his voice steady despite the obvious threat. "And now I suggest you leave. Immediately." Maya heard the footsteps retreating, then the sound of the front door closing. She stayed frozen against the wall, not daring to move, barely daring to breathe. After what felt like forever, there was a soft knock on her door. "Maya," Father Michael's voice called quietly. "They're gone. You can open the door." With shaking hands, Maya unlocked the door and pulled it open. Father Michael stood there, his face pale but composed. Agnes was behind him, wringing her hands nervously. "How did they find me so fast?" Maya whispered. "How did they even know to look here?" Father Michael stepped into the room and closed the door behind him. "I don't know for certain, but churches are often the first place people look for those seeking shelter. The Whitmores clearly have resources and connections. They may have people checking all the churches, all the shelters, anywhere a homeless girl might go." He sat down heavily in the chair, suddenly looking very tired. "That man who was here, his name is Marcus Webb. He's head of security for the Whitmore family. Very thorough, very ruthless. If he's involved, it means the Whitmores are taking this seriously." "What do we do?" Agnes asked, her voice trembling slightly. "They said they'd come back with a warrant. Can they do that?" "If they claim something was stolen, yes, they probably can get a warrant to search the premises," Father Michael admitted. "But that will take time, at least a day or two. They'll need to go through the proper legal channels, file paperwork, convince a judge." Maya felt sick. "This is all my fault. I've brought trouble to your church. Maybe I should just leave, take hope somewhere else." "Absolutely not," Father Michael interrupted firmly. "First of all, you've done nothing wrong. You saved an abandoned baby. That's not a crime. Second, if you go back out on the streets with an infant, who knows what will happen to both of you. And third, if the Whitmores are looking for you this aggressively, it means they're worried. They're afraid of what you know, what you might reveal." "But I'm just a homeless kid," Maya said desperately. "Who would believe me over them?" "That's exactly why they're so worried," Father Michael said, leaning forward intently. "Think about it, Maya. If you were meaningless, if you posed no threat, they would just let the police handle it through normal channels. But instead, they send their private security, they make threats, they try to intimidate. That tells me they're afraid of something. Probably afraid of the truth coming out." Agnes nodded slowly. "He's right. If Victoria Whitmore really did abandon her baby, that's a scandal that could destroy their family's reputation. They can't let that story get out." Maya looked down at Hope, who was starting to stir on the bed. "So what do I do? I can't hide here forever. Eventually they'll find us." "We need help," Father Michael said. "We need someone who can stand up to the Whitmores. Someone who can't be intimidated or bought. Someone who cares about the truth more than money or power." "Who?" Maya asked. "Do people like that even exist?" Father Michael smiled slightly. "Yes, they do. I know a lawyer, a woman named Sarah Chen. She specializes in family law and children's rights. She's taken on powerful people before and won. More importantly, she's honest and she genuinely cares about helping people. I've worked with her on several cases involving children from the parish." "But lawyers cost money," Maya said. "I can't afford." "Sarah does pro bono work," Agnes interjected. "That means she works for free when she believes in a case. And I think she'll believe in this one." "I'll call her right now," Father Michael said, standing up with renewed energy. "In the meantime, you both stay in this room. Keep the door locked. Don't answer if anyone knocks except me or Agnes. And stay away from the window." After Father Michael left, Agnes helped Maya feed Hope again and change her diaper. The simple, ordinary tasks of caring for the baby helped calm Maya's racing heart. There was something soothing about focusing on Hope's immediate needs rather than the bigger, scarier problems looming over them. "You're good with her," Agnes observed, watching Maya gently burp Hope. "Natural. I'm terrified I'm doing everything wrong," Maya admitted. "I've never taken care of a baby before." "None of us have the first time," Agnes said kindly. "But you're doing fine. She's clean, she's fed, she's safe. That's what matters." Maya looked at Hope, studying her tiny perfect features. "Do you think I'm crazy, Agnes, for not just turning her over to the authorities?" Agnes was quiet for a moment, considering the question carefully. "I think you're brave," she finally said. I think you saw a child in danger and you didn't look away. That takes courage. As for what happens next, well, we'll face that together. Hope finished eating and fell back asleep in Maya's arms. Maya held her close, feeling the warmth of the baby's small body, the gentle rise and fall of her breathing. For 3 weeks, Maya had felt completely alone in the world. But now, holding Hope, she realized she wasn't alone anymore. She had this tiny person depending on her, and somehow that made her feel stronger rather than weaker. There was a soft knock at the door. "It's Father Michael," came his voice. Agnes unlocked the door and let him in. His expression was serious but not panicked, which Maya took as a good sign. "I spoke with Sarah Chun," he said. "I told her the basics of the situation. She wants to meet with you, Maya, tonight here at the church. She said this is urgent and can't wait." "What if it's a trap?" Maya asked nervously. "What if she tells the Whitmores?" "Sarah would never do that," Father Michael assured her. "I've known her for 15 years. She's absolutely trustworthy. Besides, she's already angry after I told her about an abandoned newborn. She said if what I've described is true, then Victoria Whitmore needs to be held accountable, regardless of how much money the family has." Maya felt a tiny spark of hope. Maybe, just maybe, there was a way through this nightmare. Maybe there were still people in the world who cared about doing the right thing, not just the easy thing or the profitable thing. "Okay," Maya said quietly. "I'll meet with her." "Good," Father Michael nodded. "She'll be here at 8 o'clock tonight. That gives us a few hours. Try to rest if you can. Write down everything you remember about finding Hope, every detail of the letter, everything. Sarah will want to know the complete story." As evening approached, Maya sat at the small desk in the room and wrote down everything that had happened that morning. Her hand cramped from writing so much, but she forced herself to include every detail she could remember. The exact location where she found Hope, the description of the baby carrier, the words in Victoria Whitmore's letter, the monogram on the blanket, the family crest seal, the money hidden in the carrier. At precisely 8 o'clock, there was a knock on the rectory's front door. Maya heard voices in the hallway, then footsteps approaching her room. Her heart started racing again. This was it. Whatever happened next would determine not just her future, but Hope's future too. The knock on her door was gentle. "Maya?" The Saracen. "May I come in?" Maya took a deep breath, looked down at Hope sleeping in her makeshift bed of blankets on the floor, and made her decision. "Yes," she called out. "Come in." The door opened, and a woman stepped inside. She was younger than Maya expected, maybe in her mid-30s, with long dark hair pulled back in a ponytail and sharp, intelligent eyes behind stylish glasses. She wore jeans and a sweater, not the fancy suit Maya had imagined a lawyer would wear. She carried a leather bag over her shoulder and had a warm, genuine smile. "Hello, Maya," Sarah said softly, her eyes immediately finding the sleeping baby. "And this must be Hope." Sarah Chun moved quietly into the room, setting her leather bag down gently so as not to wake Hope. She pulled the chair closer to where Maya sat on the edge of the bed and settled into it, her expression serious but kind. "Before we begin," Sarah said, "I want you to understand something important. Everything you tell me is confidential. That means I cannot and will not share it with anyone without your permission. Not the Whitmores, not the police, not anyone. My job is to protect you and this baby. Do you understand?" Maya nodded, feeling some of the tension leave her shoulders. There was something about Sarah's calm, steady presence that made her feel safer. "Good. Now, Father Michael gave me the basic outline, but I need to hear everything from you. Start from the very beginning. Take your time. Don't leave anything out, no matter how small or unimportant it might seem." So Maya told her story again, this time in even greater detail. She described waking up in the alley, hearing the cry, finding Hope behind the dumpster. She recited as much of Victoria Whitmore's letter as she could remember, word for word. She showed Sarah the monogrammed blanket and described the family crest seal that had been pressed into the letter. When Maya got to the part about the money, Sarah's eyebrows rose slightly, but she didn't interrupt. She just listened, occasionally jotting notes in a small notebook she'd pulled from her bag. "And you haven't touched the money?" Sarah asked when Maya finished. "No. Well, I looked at it to confirm it was real, but I haven't spent any of it. It's still all there, hidden in the bottom of the carrier. I'm afraid to touch it. I'm afraid it will make me look guilty of something." "Smart," Sarah said approvingly. "Very smart. That money is evidence, and the fact that you haven't touched it works in your favor." She tapped her pen against her notebook thoughtfully. "Here's what we're dealing with. Legally, abandoning a child is a serious crime in this state. It doesn't matter how much money you leave with the baby. Victoria Whitmore committed a felony when she left Hope in that alley. But she said she would deny everything," Maya said. "She said she has lawyers and resources and that I would be the one in trouble." "She's partially right," Sarah admitted. "The Whitmores do have excellent lawyers and tremendous influence in this city. If this goes to court right now with no evidence except your word against theirs, it would be very difficult to prove what really happened. They would claim the baby was kidnapped, that you stole the carrier and blanket, that you made up the story about finding her abandoned." Maya felt her heart sink. "So there's nothing we can do?" "I didn't say that," Sarah said with a slight smile. "I said it would be difficult, not impossible. We have several things working in our favor. First, you acted immediately to protect the baby. You didn't try to hide her or keep the money. You sought help from a church, which shows good intent. Second, the Whitmores are already acting guilty, sending private security instead of just calling the police, making threats, trying to intimidate witnesses. That all suggests they're desperate to keep something quiet. But how do we prove what really happened?" Maya asked. "The letter is gone. Victoria Whitmore probably destroyed it already, just like she said she would." Sarah leaned forward intently. "Here's what most people don't understand about the law, Maya. Physical evidence is important, but it's not the only kind of evidence. We have your testimony, which is detailed and consistent. We have the baby herself, who can be DNA tested to prove she's Victoria Whitmore's daughter. We have the monogrammed blanket and the expensive carrier, which can be traced. And we have the Whitmore's own behavior, which is highly suspicious." "DNA test?" Maya hadn't thought of that. "But wouldn't we need Victoria Whitmore's DNA to compare? There are ways to obtain that legally and otherwise. But more importantly, if we can prove that Hope is Richard Whitmore's daughter, that opens up a whole other set of questions. Like, where did this baby come from? When was she born? Why was there no birth announcement? Why didn't Richard Whitmore know about her?" Maya's eyes widened as she began to understand. "You mean, even if Victoria denies abandoning Hope, people will still ask questions?" "Exactly. The Whitmores live very public lives. They're in the society pages constantly. Victoria Whitmore was supposedly in Paris 3 months ago for Fashion Week. But if she was pregnant then, people would have noticed. Which means she was hiding the pregnancy. Which means there's a secret. And secrets have a way of coming to light." Hope stirred on her blanket bed and made a small whimpering sound. Maya immediately got up and gently picked her up, rocking her softly. The baby settled back down, nestling against Maya's shoulder. Sarah watched this interaction with a thoughtful expression. "You care about her?" she observed. "This isn't just about doing the right thing for you. You've bonded with her." Maya looked down at Hope's tiny face. "I know it's only been 1 day. I know that's crazy. But yes, I care about her. She was thrown away by her own mother, left in an alley like trash. Someone needs to care about her. Someone needs to fight for her. That someone could be you," Sarah said quietly. "Have you thought about what you want to happen here, Maya? Long term. What do you mean? I mean, what's the best outcome in your mind? Do you want Hope to go back to the Whitmore family, to a father who didn't know she existed? Do you want her placed in foster care? Do you want to try to keep her yourself? You need to think about what you're fighting for here." Maya sat back down on the bed, still holding Hope. She hadn't really thought beyond keeping the baby safe in the immediate moment. But Sarah was right. She needed to think about the future. "I don't want her to go to Victoria Whitmore," Maya said firmly. "A woman who abandons her baby doesn't deserve to get her back. And I don't know anything about Richard Whitmore as a person. Maybe he would be a good father, maybe not. But how do we even know he wants her? His wife clearly didn't. What about you? Sarah pressed. Do you want to keep her? I'm 17 and homeless, Maya said, her voice breaking slightly. How could I possibly keep her? I can't even take care of myself. You're homeless right now, Sarah corrected. That doesn't mean you always will be. There are programs, resources, ways to help teenage mothers. You're almost 18. With the right support system, it's not impossible. I'm not her mother, Maya whispered. No, but you're the one who saved her life. You're the one who's been caring for her since you found her. That counts for something. That counts for a lot, actually. Sarah closed her notebook and looked at Maya seriously. I'm not saying it would be easy. I'm not saying there wouldn't be obstacles and challenges. But if you want to fight for custody of Hope, I will help you. I will fight for you both. Maya felt tears stinging her eyes. Why would you do that? You don't even know me. I know enough, Sarah said simply. I know you chose courage over convenience. I know you protected a helpless baby when the easiest thing would have been to walk away. I know you're still here, still fighting, even though you're terrified. That tells me everything I need to know about your character. Before Maya could respond, they heard voices outside again. Loud voices. Multiple people. Father Michael's voice rose above the others, angry now in a way Maya hadn't heard before. Sarah was on her feet instantly, moving to the door. Stay here, she instructed Maya. Lock the door behind me. Don't open it for anyone except Father Michael, Agnes, or me. She slipped out of the room, and Maya quickly locked the door behind her. She pressed her ear against it, straining to hear what was happening. Hope began to fuss in her arms, picking up on Maya's tension. This is a warrant to search these premises, an official-sounding voice was saying. Signed by Judge Morrison. We're looking for evidence related to a kidnapping. Kidnapping? Father Michael's voice was incredulous. That's absurd. There's been no kidnapping. We have evidence that a newborn infant belonging to the Whitmore family was taken from their property, the official voice continued. We have reason to believe the child and the perpetrator are on these premises. Sarah's voice cut through clearly, sharp, and professional. I'm Sarah Chun, attorney at law. May I see that warrant, please? There was a rustling of paper. Then Sarah spoke again. This warrant was obtained under false pretenses. There was no kidnapping. The child in question was found abandoned in an alley. My client rescued her and brought her to safety. Your client is a homeless minor with no means to care for a child. A new voice interjected. Cold. Familiar. Marcus Webb, the Whitmore security chief. The logical conclusion is that she saw an opportunity for ransom. The logical conclusion, Sarah shot back, her voice icy, is that someone abandoned a helpless infant and is now trying to cover up their crime by making false accusations against the person who saved that child's life. These are serious charges you're making, the official voice said, sounding uncertain now. Yes, they are, Sarah agreed, which is why I suggest we all proceed very carefully. I'm formally notifying you that I represent both the minor in question and the welfare of the infant. Any questioning will be done in my presence, and I will be filing a protective order first thing tomorrow morning. A protective order? Marcus Webb's voice dripped with disdain. On what grounds? On the grounds that the Whitmore family is using their wealth and influence to intimidate and threaten vulnerable individuals, Sarah replied coolly. Now you have a warrant to search the premises. Fine. Search away. But you will not question my clients without proper legal representation, and you will not remove the child from this location without a court order specifically addressing her welfare and placement. There was a long, tense silence. Maya held her breath, holding Hope close. Then the official voice spoke again, more respectful now. Very well, counselor. We'll conduct our search. But this isn't over. No, Sarah agreed. It's not. It's only beginning. Maya heard footsteps throughout the rectory, doors opening and closing, voices conferring. The search seemed to take forever. Hope had fallen back asleep, but Maya remained rigid with tension. wondering what would happen when they inevitably came to her door. Finally, there was a knock. "This door is locked," a man's voice called out. "Open it, please." "One moment," Sarah's voice came. Then quietly, "Maya, it's Sarah. I'm with the police officers conducting the search. I need you to open the door. It's going to be okay. I'm right here." With shaking hands, Maya unlocked the door and opened it. Two police officers stood in the hallway, with Sarah positioned firmly between them and the door. Behind them, Maya could see Marcus Webb, his cold eyes fixed on her with unmistakable hostility. One of the officers, a middle-aged woman with kind eyes, looked past Maya to where Hope lay sleeping. Her expression softened immediately. "Is the baby okay?" the officer asked gently. "She's fine," Maya managed to say. "She's fed and clean and safe." The officer nodded and stepped into the room, conducting a quick but thorough search. She looked in the dresser, under the bed, in the small bathroom. When she found the baby carrier with the hidden compartment full of money, she stopped and looked at Maya with raised eyebrows. "That's evidence," Sarah said immediately. "My client found it with the baby. She hasn't touched it." The officer photographed the money, counted it carefully, and made notes. Then she sealed the carrier in a large evidence bag. "We'll need to take this," she said to Sarah. "Understood. But the money proves my client's story. She had access to $20,000 and didn't take any of it. Does that sound like someone who kidnapped a baby for ransom?" The officer's expression suggested she agreed, but she said nothing. When the search was complete, both officers returned to the hallway. Maya heard them conferring with someone, probably their supervisor. Then Marcus Webb pushed forward, his face twisted with anger. "That baby is Whitmore property," he snarled. "She needs to be returned to the family immediately." "Property?" Sarah's voice was dangerously quiet. "Did you just refer to a human infant as property?" Webb seemed to realize his mistake, but before he could backtrack, the female police officer spoke up. "The child appears healthy and well cared for. Without a specific court order regarding her placement, and given the disputed circumstances of how she came to be here, I'm not removing her from her current location. Child Protective Services will need to be involved." "This is outrageous," Webb began, but the officer cut him off. "This is procedure, Mr. Webb. If the Whitmore family has a claim to this child, they can make it through the proper legal channels. But right now, that baby is safe, and that's what matters most. We're done here." The officers left, taking the evidence with them. Marcus Webb lingered for a moment, his cold eyes boring into Maya. "This isn't over, girl. The Whitmores always win. Always." Then he too was gone, and the rectory fell silent except for the sound of Hope's gentle breathing. Maya's legs suddenly felt weak, and she sat down hard on the bed. Father Michael appeared in the doorway, looking exhausted but relieved. "Everyone okay?" Maya nodded, not trusting herself to speak. Sarah squeezed her shoulder gently. "You did great, Maya, but things are about to get a lot more complicated. The Whitmores know where you are now. They'll be coming after Hope with everything they have. We need to be ready." "What happens next?" Maya asked quietly. Sarah's expression was grim. "Now we go to war." The morning after the police search, Maya woke to Hope's crying and the sound of rain pattering against the window. She had barely slept, her mind churning with worry about what would happen next. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw Marcus Webb's cold stare and heard his threatening words echoing in her head. She fed Hope, changed her diaper, and dressed her in one of the little outfits Agnes had bought. The simple routine helped calm Maya's nerves. There was something grounding about taking care of Hope's basic needs, about being useful and needed. A soft knock came at the door. "Maya, it's Agnes. I brought you some breakfast." Maya opened the door to find Agnes holding a tray with scrambled eggs, toast, orange juice, and a steaming cup of hot chocolate. The kindness of the gesture brought tears to Maya's eyes. "Thank you," she whispered, "for everything. I don't know how I'll ever repay you." Agnes set the tray down and gave Maya a warm hug. "Sweetheart, you don't repay kindness. You just pass it on when you get the chance. Now eat up. You need your strength." Sarah called this morning. She's coming by at 10 o'clock. She said she has news. News could be good or bad, Maya thought as she ate. The eggs were perfectly cooked, fluffy and seasoned just right. Maya realized she hadn't eaten a real meal in days. She'd been surviving on cheap crackers and whatever leftovers she could find. Her body seemed to wake up with the proper food, energy returning to her tired muscles. Hope lay on the bed beside her, staring up at the ceiling with those wise blue eyes. Maya reached over and gently stroked her soft cheek. "What's going to happen to us, little one?" she whispered. At exactly 10 o'clock, Sarah arrived, shaking rain from her umbrella. She looked professional today in a navy suit, her hair pulled back in a neat bun. But there was something in her expression that made Maya nervous. She looked like someone preparing for battle. Father Michael and Agnes joined them in Maya's room, everyone gathering around as Sarah opened her briefcase and pulled out a folder thick with papers. "All right," Sarah began, her tone businesslike. "Several things have happened overnight. First, the good news. The police report from last night's search clearly states that the baby appeared healthy, clean, and well cared for. The officer also noted that $20,000 in cash was found untouched, which supports your story about finding it rather than stealing it." "What's the bad news?" Maya asked, her stomach nodding. "The Whitmores have filed an emergency petition with family court. They're claiming that Hope was taken from their property by deception, and they're demanding immediate custody. The hearing is scheduled for tomorrow morning at 9. "Tomorrow?" Maya's voice rose in panic. "That's so fast. How can they get a hearing that quickly?" "Money and connections," Sarah said grimly. "They have both in abundance. Judge Morrison, the same judge who signed last night's search warrant, will be hearing the case. He's known to be friendly with the Whitmore family's law firm." "So we've already lost," Maya said, feeling defeated. "No," Sarah said firmly. "We haven't lost, but we're fighting uphill. However, I have a strategy. The key is that the Whitmores are claiming Hope was taken from their property. But according to your statement, you found her in a public alley, abandoned. If we can prove she was abandoned, then their claim falls apart." "But how do we prove that?" Father Michael asked. "Maya's word against theirs." "We need witnesses," Sarah said. "Maya, you said you found Hope behind Chen's restaurant. Is it possible someone saw something that morning? Maybe Mr. Chen, or an employee, or someone passing by?" Maya thought back to that morning, trying to remember every detail. It was very early, around 6:30 or 7. Mr. Chen usually doesn't come in until 8. But there's a delivery truck that comes sometimes around dawn. And there's a woman who walks her dog past the alley every morning. I've seen her several times. "That's something," Sarah said, making notes. "We need to find these people and get statements. Father, can you help with this? Maybe visit the restaurant, talk to neighbors." "Of course," Father Michael agreed immediately. "I'll go this afternoon." "There's something else," Sarah continued. "I did some digging into Victoria Whitmore's recent activities. According to social media and society page coverage, she was supposedly traveling extensively over the past year. Paris, Milan, the Hamptons. But interestingly, there are very few photographs of her from about 6 months ago until about a week ago. The few photos that do exist are either at a distance or from the shoulders up." "She was hiding the pregnancy," Agnes said. "Exactly. Which raises the question, why? Why would a wealthy married woman need to hide a pregnancy from her own husband?" Maya had been wondering the same thing. The letter said the baby didn't fit into their plans, that their family had expectations. What does that mean? Sarah pulled out another document. "This is where it gets interesting. I had a colleague do some research into the Whitmore family. Richard and Victoria have been married for 8 years. They have no other children. But here's what's curious. Richard Whitmore has been very public about wanting an heir to take over his real estate empire. He's mentioned it in several interviews. So why would Victoria hide a baby from a husband who desperately wants a child?" The room fell silent as everyone considered this question. Then Maya's eyes widened as a horrible possibility occurred to her. "Unless," she said slowly, "unless Hope isn't his baby. Unless that's why Victoria had to hide the pregnancy and abandon hope. Because Richard Whitmore isn't her father. Sarah nodded grimly. That's my theory too. If Victoria had an affair and got pregnant, she couldn't let her husband find out. The scandal would destroy the marriage and her place in high society. So she hid the pregnancy and got rid of the baby. But if that's true, Father Michael said, then Richard Whitmore has no idea hope even exists. He's not part of this abandonment. He might not even know Victoria was pregnant. Which means, Sarah continued, that when the Whitmores filed for custody of Hope, Victoria had to tell him about her. Or at least tell him some version of the story. And I'm willing to bet she didn't tell him the truth. What do you think she told him? Maya asked. Probably that the baby was kidnapped from their home. That you're some opportunistic thief who saw a chance to extort money from them. It's the story that makes her look innocent and you look guilty. Maya felt sick. So Richard Whitmore thinks I stole his baby? Most likely. And that makes him dangerous, Maya. A man who believes his child was stolen will stop at nothing to get her back. He'll use every resource at his disposal. But what if we tell him the truth? Maya suggested. What if we tell him that Victoria abandoned Hope? That she had an affair? That Hope might not even be his daughter? Sarah shook her head. Without proof, he won't believe us. He'll think we're making up lies to cover your supposed crime. And Victoria will deny everything. She's had time to prepare her story, to cover her tracks. We need evidence, not just theories. What about DNA? Agnes asked. Can't we test Hope's DNA and prove whether Richard is her father or not? We could, Sarah admitted. But we'd need a court order for that, and Judge Morrison is unlikely to grant one without probable cause. And even if we got the DNA test and it proved Richard wasn't the father, that doesn't necessarily prove Victoria abandoned Hope. She could claim you somehow obtained DNA samples, or that the test was tampered with. The Whitmores have enough money to cast doubt on any evidence we present. Maya felt overwhelmed. Every solution seemed to lead to another impossible obstacle. So what do we do? How do we fight this? Sarah leaned forward, her expression intense. We go into that courtroom tomorrow and we tell the truth. We tell your story, calmly and clearly. We show that you acted to save an abandoned baby, not to kidnap one. We demonstrate that you had access to $20,000 and didn't touch it, which proves you weren't motivated by money. And we raise questions about Victoria's story. Why was there no police report filed about a missing baby before you brought Hope here? Why did the Whitmores send private security instead of calling the police immediately? Why are they so desperate to keep this quiet? Will that be enough? Father Michael asked. I don't know, Sarah admitted honestly. But it's what we have. And sometimes the truth has a power of its own. Sometimes, when you shine a light on lies, they fall apart. What if we lose tomorrow? Maya asked, her voice small. What if the judge gives Hope to the Whitmores? Sarah was quiet for a moment. Then we appeal. And we keep fighting. But Maya, I need to be honest with you. If the judge rules against us tomorrow, Hope will likely be placed with the Whitmores temporarily while the appeal process plays out. That could take weeks or even months. Maya looked down at Hope, sleeping peacefully in her arms. The thought of handing her over to Victoria Whitmore, to the woman who had thrown her away like garbage, made Maya's chest ache with a physical pain. She had only known this baby for 2 days, but already she couldn't imagine her life without Hope in it. I can't let that happen, Maya said fiercely. I can't let them take her. I know, Sarah said gently, and I'm going to fight with everything I have to prevent it. But you need to prepare yourself for the possibility. You need to be strong. How am I supposed to be strong when everything feels hopeless? Agnes moved to sit beside Maya, putting a comforting arm around her shoulders. You're already strong, sweetheart. You've survived things that would have broken most people. You lost your grandmother, your home, everything. And instead of giving up, instead of becoming bitter or cruel, you saved a baby's life. That's not hopelessness. That's courage. Maya wiped tears from her eyes. My grandmother used to say that courage isn't about not being afraid. It's about doing what's right even when you are afraid. Your grandmother was a wise woman, Sarah said, and she would be very proud of you right now. She gathered up her papers and stood. I have a lot of work to do before tomorrow. I need to prepare our case, file some motions, and see if I can dig up any more information about Victoria's activities over the past year. Father, can you focus on finding those potential witnesses from the alley? I'll leave right now, Father Michael promised. After Sarah and Father Michael left, Agnes helped Maya give Hope a bath in the small sink. The baby seemed to enjoy the warm water, her tiny legs kicking with delight. For a few moments, Maya could almost forget about court hearings and custody battles. For a few moments, it was just her and Hope and the simple joy of caring for this little life. But as evening approached, Maya's anxiety returned. Tomorrow would determine Hope's future. Tomorrow, she would have to face the Whitmores in court and fight for a baby who had already stolen her heart. That night, Maya couldn't sleep. She lay in bed with Hope beside her, listening to the baby's soft breathing. At some point in the early morning hours, Maya heard a sound outside her window. Car door closing. Footsteps on gravel. Voices speaking in low, urgent tones. Maya's heart began to race. She crept to the window and carefully peeked through the curtain. In the darkness, she could just make out figures moving near the back of the church. 2 men, maybe 3. One of them was speaking into a phone. Maya couldn't hear what they were saying, but she didn't need to. She knew who had sent them. Marcus Webb and the Whitmores weren't waiting for tomorrow's hearing. They were making their move tonight, and Maya had no idea how to stop them. Maya's hands trembled as she backed away from the window. Her mind raced through options. Should she wake Father Michael? Call Sarah? Grab Hope and run? But where would they go? The rectory only had 2 exits, and if the men outside were watching both, they would be trapped. She scooped Hope up carefully, the baby stirring but not waking, and pressed herself against the wall beside the door, trying to think. The voices outside grew slightly louder, then faded. Were they leaving, or were they circling the building, looking for a way in? Maya waited in the darkness, her heart hammering so hard she thought it might wake Hope. Minutes passed like hours. Then she heard it, the creak of a door opening somewhere in the building. Not the front door, that would have been louder. Maybe the side entrance, or the door that led from the church into the rectory. Footsteps in the hallway. Quiet, careful footsteps trying not to make noise. Maya held her breath, clutching Hope tighter. The footsteps stopped right outside her door. Maya could see the doorknob starting to turn, slowly, testing to see if it was locked. It was locked. Thank God it was locked. There was a long pause, then a soft curse from the other side of the door. Maya heard whispering, 2 voices conferring. Then the footsteps moved away, continuing down the hall. Maya heard a door open. Father Michael's room. She had to warn him. She had to do something. But if she opened her door, they would hear her. They would know she was awake. They would know she knew they were here. Then Maya heard Father Michael's voice, loud and clear and angry. What in God's name do you think you're doing? This is breaking and entering. I'm calling the police right now. Put the phone down, Father, a man's voice said, cold, threatening. We're not here to hurt anyone. We just want the baby. You can't have her, Father Michael said firmly. Now get out of this building before I have you arrested. Father, don't make this difficult. Mr. Whitmore has authorized us to retrieve his daughter by any means necessary. You can either hand her over peacefully, or we can take her. Your choice. Maya's blood ran cold. She had to act. She couldn't let them take Hope. But she was one 17-year-old girl against grown men who clearly had no problem breaking the law. Then Maya remembered something. The rectory had a basement. Father Michael had mentioned it once, said it was used for storage. And the basement had an old coal chute that led to the outside, left over from when the building was heated by a coal furnace decades ago. She had seen the metal door on the outside of the building, painted over but still there. It was a long shot, but it was the only option she had. Moving as quietly as possible, Maya unlocked her door and eased it open just a crack. The hallway was empty. The voices were still coming from Father Michael's room at the other end of the hall. She could hear the priest arguing, buying time. Maya slipped out of her room with hope and moved quickly but silently toward the door that led to the basement stairs. It was old and creaky, and opening it would make noise, but she had no choice. She turned the handle and winced as the hinges squeaked. The voices in Father Michael's room stopped. "What was that?" one of the men said. Maya didn't wait. She plunged through the door and down the basement stairs, moving as fast as she dared in the darkness while carrying hope. Behind her, she heard running footsteps and shouting. "She's going for the basement. Cut her off outside." The basement was pitch black and smelled of dust and old wood. Maya fumbled along the wall, searching desperately for the coal chute she prayed was still there. Her fingers found cold metal. The chute door. It was held shut by a rusty latch that fought against her pulling fingers. Footsteps thundered down the basement stairs. A flashlight beam cut through the darkness, sweeping back and forth. "I know you're down here, girl. There's no way out. Make this easy on yourself." Maya yanked at the latch with all her strength. It gave way suddenly, and she nearly fell backward. The coal chute door swung open with a screech of metal. Cold night air rushed in. The opening was small, barely big enough for an adult to squeeze through, but Maya was thin from weeks of not eating properly. She clutched hope tightly against her chest and dove through the opening feet first, sliding down the short metal chute and tumbling out onto wet grass. The rain had stopped, but everything was slick and muddy. Maya scrambled to her feet just as she heard shouting from inside the basement. "She's outside." She went through the coal chute. Maya ran. She didn't know where she was running to, just away. Away from the church, away from the men chasing her, away from danger. Hope began crying, jarred awake by all the movement and sensing Maya's panic. Shoo! Shoo! It's okay," Maya gasped as she ran through the dark streets. "I've got you. I've got you." She could hear footsteps behind her, more than one person. They were chasing her. She turned down an alley, then another, trying to lose them in the maze of back streets she had come to know during her weeks of homelessness. But they were faster than her, and she was carrying a baby. Maya's lungs burned. Her legs felt like rubber. She couldn't keep running much longer. She ducked behind a dumpster, pressing herself into the shadows, trying to quiet her ragged breathing and Hope's crying. The footsteps came closer. Stopped. "She went this way. I saw her turn into this alley. Split up. She can't have gone far. And be careful with the baby. Mr. Whitmore wants his daughter unharmed." The footsteps separated, moving in different directions. Maya waited, hardly daring to breathe. One set of footsteps was coming directly toward her hiding spot. Closer, closer. She could see the beam of a flashlight playing across the walls. Then suddenly another sound. Sirens. Police sirens, getting louder, coming closer. The footsteps stopped. "Cops. We need to move. Now." "But the girl." "I said now. Mr. Webb will handle this another way. We can't be caught here." The footsteps retreated quickly. Maya heard a car engine start, then speed away. The sirens grew even louder, then seemed to circle the area. Red and blue lights flashed at the end of the alley. Maya stayed hidden for several more minutes, making sure the men were really gone. Hope had quieted to soft whimpers, exhausted from crying. Maya's whole body was shaking, from cold, from fear, from adrenaline. Finally, she emerged from behind the dumpster. She had to get back to the church, had to make sure Father Michael was okay, had to figure out what to do next. But as she started walking back, she realized she wasn't entirely sure where she was. In her panic, she had run without paying attention to direction. She was lost. At night, in the rain, with a baby. Maya wanted to cry, wanted to give up, wanted to collapse right there on the wet pavement. But Hope needed her. Hope was depending on her. So Maya kept walking, trying to find something familiar, some landmark that would tell her which way to go. After what felt like hours but was probably only 20 minutes, Maya finally recognized a street sign. She was about 6 blocks from the church. She started walking faster, desperate to get back to safety. As she approached the church, she saw police cars parked outside, their lights still flashing. An ambulance, too. Maya's heart lurched. Was someone hurt? Was Father Michael okay? She hurried up the steps and through the front door. The church was full of people. Police officers, paramedics, and there, sitting in a pew with a blanket around his shoulders, was Father Michael. He had a cut on his forehead and looked shaken, but he was alive. Maya! Agnes's voice cried out. The older woman rushed over and pulled Maya into a fierce hug, careful not to crush hope between them. Thank God. Thank God you're safe. We were so worried. Sarah was there too, looking furious and determined all at once. She strode over to Maya. Are you hurt? Is the baby hurt? We're okay, Maya managed to say. We're both okay. But those men, they broke into the church. They tried to take Hope. I know, Sarah said grimly. Father Michael called me and the police. They got away before the police arrived, but Father Michael gave descriptions. We know it was people working for the Whitmores. A police officer approached them, a tall black woman with sergeant stripes on her uniform. You must be Maya. I'm Sergeant Johnson. I need to ask you some questions about what happened tonight. Maya told her everything, from hearing voices outside her window to escaping through the coal chute to hiding in the alley. Sergeant Johnson took detailed notes, her expression growing darker with each sentence. This is serious, she said when Maya finished. Breaking and entering, attempted kidnapping, assault on Father Michael. The Whitmores have powerful lawyers, but this crosses a line. I'll be filing charges. Will it matter? Maya asked bitterly. They have money and connections. They'll probably get away with it. Maybe, Sergeant Johnson admitted, but maybe not. Rich people aren't as untouchable as they think they are. And when they get desperate and sloppy like they did tonight, that's when they make mistakes. She looked at Sarah. You're representing this girl? I am, Sarah confirmed. Good. She's going to need you. This situation just got a whole lot more complicated. Sergeant Johnson closed her notebook. I'm posting an officer outside this church for the rest of the night. Nobody else is getting in here without authorization. After the police finished taking statements and the paramedics checked everyone over, Sarah pulled Maya aside. We need to talk about tomorrow's hearing. Will it still happen? Maya asked. After what they did tonight? Oh, it'll happen, Sarah said. In fact, what happened tonight might work in our favor. It shows the Whitmores are desperate and willing to break the law. That doesn't look good for them in a custody hearing. She paused. But Maya, you need to understand something. This is going to get ugly. The Whitmores are going to throw everything they have at you. They're going to try to destroy your character, make you look like a criminal, a liar, unfit to care for a baby. You need to be prepared for that. I am prepared, Maya said, though her voice shook slightly. I'll do whatever it takes to protect Hope. Sarah studied her face for a long moment. You really love this baby, don't you? Maya looked down at Hope, now sleeping peacefully in her arms despite everything that had happened. Yes, she said simply. I know it sounds crazy. I've only known her for 2 days. But yes, I love her. Then we fight, Sarah said firmly. We go into that courtroom tomorrow, and we fight for her with everything we have. As dawn began to break outside, painting the stained glass windows in shades of pink and gold, Maya sat in a pew with Hope, surrounded by people who had become her unlikely family. Father Michael with his bandaged forehead, Agnes with her gentle hands and kind heart, Sarah with her fierce determination to see justice done. Maya had spent weeks feeling alone, believing she had no one left in the world who cared about her. But now she realized she had been wrong. There were still good people. There were still people who chose kindness over convenience, who fought for what was right even when it was hard. Her grandmother had been right all along. Choose kindness. Be brave. And somehow things would work out. At least Maya desperately hoped they would. Because in just a few hours, she would walk into that courtroom and face the Whitmores. And everything, absolutely everything, would hang in the balance. The courtroom was smaller than Maya had imagined. She had seen courtrooms on television. Grand spaces with high ceilings and imposing wooden benches. This one was plain, with fluorescent lights and worn carpet. More like a regular office than a place where life-changing decisions were made. But the moment Maya walked through those doors carrying hope, she felt the weight of what was about to happen pressing down on her shoulders like a physical force. Sarah walked beside her, professional and confident in her dark suit, carrying a briefcase full of documents. Father Michael and Agnes sat in the row behind them, their presence a comfort even though they couldn't speak on Maya's behalf. Across the aisle, the Whitmore legal team had already assembled. 3 lawyers in expensive suits, all carrying leather folders and looking like they had never lost a case in their lives. And then there were the Whitmores themselves. Richard Whitmore was exactly what Maya had expected from seeing his face on billboards. Tall, distinguished, maybe 50 years old, with perfectly styled gray hair and a suit that probably cost more than Maya's grandmother had earned in a year. He looked powerful, confident, like a man who was used to getting exactly what he wanted. Victoria Whitmore sat beside him, and Maya found herself staring despite trying not to. She was beautiful in the way rich women often are, with perfect blonde hair, flawless makeup, and a designer dress in pale blue. She looked composed, calm, almost serene. She certainly didn't look like a woman who had abandoned her baby in an alley 2 days ago. Victoria's eyes met Maya's across the courtroom, and for just a moment, something flickered in her expression. Fear? Guilt? But it was gone so quickly Maya wondered if she had imagined it. Victoria's face returned to that same calm mask, and she turned to whisper something to one of her lawyers. "All rise," the bailiff called out. The Honorable Judge Morrison presiding. Everyone stood as Judge Morrison entered. He was older, maybe in his late 60s, with white hair and a stern face. He settled into his chair and surveyed the courtroom with sharp eyes that seemed to miss nothing. "Please be seated," he said, his voice gravelly. "We're here for an emergency custody hearing in the matter of baby Whitmore. Counselors, are both parties ready to proceed?" The lead Whitmore attorney, a man with silver hair and an air of supreme confidence, stood. "Yes, Your Honor." Harold Preston representing Richard and Victoria Whitmore. Sarah stood as well. Sarah Chun representing Maya Torres and advocating for the best interests of the minor child. "Your Honor." Judge Morrison nodded. "Mr. Preston, this is your petition. You may begin." Harold Preston approached the bench with the practiced ease of someone who had done this hundreds of times. "Your Honor, this is a straightforward case. My client's newborn daughter was taken from their property 3 days ago by the respondent, Maya Torres, a homeless minor with no means to care for an infant. Despite having access to substantial funds found with the child, Ms. Torres did not contact authorities or attempt to return the baby to her rightful parents. Instead, she went into hiding, forcing my clients to search desperately for their missing daughter. Maya felt her face flush with anger. That wasn't what happened at all. But Sarah had warned her not to react, to stay calm no matter what was said. Preston continued. "My clients are requesting immediate custody of their daughter, as well as a restraining order preventing Miss Torres from coming within 500 feet of the child. We believe there is substantial risk of flight, given Miss Torres's current living situation and lack of ties to the community." "Your Honor," Sarah said, standing. "May I respond?" "Go ahead, Miss Chun." Sarah moved to stand before the judge, her posture confident but respectful. "Your Honor, Mr. Preston's characterization of events is fundamentally incorrect. Miss Torres did not take this baby from anyone's property. She found the infant abandoned in an alley behind Chen's restaurant, left in a carrier with a note and $20,000 in cash. The note explicitly stated that the baby was being abandoned and instructed whoever found her not to contact the family." Preston scoffed. "Your Honor, we have no evidence of this alleged note. It conveniently disappeared, according to Miss Torres's story." "The note may be gone," Sarah countered, "but the circumstances speak for themselves. If this baby was kidnapped from the Whitmore home, why was there no police report filed? Why did the Whitmores send private security to search for the baby instead of immediately contacting law enforcement? And why, just last night, did individuals working for the Whitmores break into a church and attempt to take the baby by force, assaulting a priest in the process?" Judge Morrison's eyebrows rose. "Is this true, Mr. Preston?" Preston shifted slightly, the first crack in his confident demeanor. "Your Honor, My clients were desperate to recover their daughter. If security personnel acted overzealously, it was only because my clients were frantic with worry about their child's safety. Overzealously. Sarah's voice rose slightly. They broke into a church, Your Honor. They assaulted Father Michael Harrison, who required medical attention. They chased a 17-year-old girl through the streets in the middle of the night while she was carrying an infant. This is not the behavior of parents whose child was kidnapped. This is the behavior of people trying to cover up a crime. That's a serious accusation, Ms. Chun, Judge Morrison said. Do you have evidence to support it? I have the police report from last night's incident, Your Honor. I also have testimony from Father Harrison, who will confirm that Miss Torres arrived at his church voluntarily, seeking help for an abandoned baby. And I have the testimony of Miss Torres herself, who has been consistent in her account from the very beginning. Preston jumped in. Your Honor, Miss Torres is a homeless teenager with every motivation to lie. She found a baby, saw an opportunity to extort money from a wealthy family, and concocted this elaborate story to cover her actions. Then why didn't she take the money? Sarah shot back. The police report confirms that all $20,000 was found untouched in the carrier. If Miss Torres was motivated by greed, why wouldn't she have taken at least some of the cash? Judge Morrison held up a hand. Counselors, I think we need to hear directly from the parties involved. Mrs. Whitmore, please take the stand. Victoria Whitmore stood gracefully and walked to the witness stand. She placed her hand on the Bible and swore to tell the truth, her voice steady and clear. Maya watched her carefully, looking for any sign of the guilt she must be feeling, but Victoria's mask remained perfect. Preston began questioning her gently. Mrs. Whitmore, can you tell the court what happened 3 days ago? Victoria's eyes filled with tears on cue. It was the most terrifying day of my life. I had just given birth to our daughter at home with the help of a private midwife. My husband was away on business, and I was recovering when I heard a noise. I got up to check, and when I came back, the baby was gone. Someone had taken her right from her bassinet while I was in the next room. It was a complete lie, delivered so convincingly that Maya almost doubted her own memory. Almost. Did you see who took her? Preston asked. No, but our security cameras showed a young woman leaving through our back gate carrying something wrapped in a blanket. When we enhanced the footage, we identified her as Maya Torres, a homeless girl who had been seen in our neighborhood the previous week. Maya's mouth fell open. That was impossible. She had never been anywhere near the Whitmore mansion. She had never even seen it except in magazine photos. Sarah stood. Objection, Your Honor. If such footage exists, we haven't been provided with it as part of discovery. Mr. Preston? Judge Morrison looked at the attorney expectantly. We're having the footage enhanced by experts, Your Honor. It will be available shortly. I want to see that footage before this hearing concludes, the judge said firmly. Continue. Preston turned back to Victoria. Mrs. Whitmore, why didn't you call the police immediately? Victoria dabbed at her eyes with a tissue. I was in shock, and I was afraid. My husband has enemies in the business world. I thought perhaps this was some kind of ransom situation. Our head of security, Marcus Webb, advised us to handle it privately at first to avoid putting our daughter in more danger. It all sounded so reasonable, so logical. Maya could see how anyone listening would believe Victoria's story over hers. A wealthy, well-spoken woman versus a homeless teenager. Who would the judge believe? Preston finished his questioning and returned to his seat. Sarah approached the witness stand, and Maya could see the steel in her eyes. Mrs. Whitmore, Sarah began, her voice calm but pointed. You said you gave birth at home with a private midwife. What was the midwife's name? Victoria hesitated for just a fraction of a second. Dr. Margaret Walsh. Dr. Walsh. And where is Dr. Walsh now? She returned to her practice in Boston. I see. And do you have documentation of this home birth? A birth certificate filed with the state. Another tiny hesitation. Not yet. We were planning to file the paperwork this week. Interesting. Most parents file birth certificates within a few days of birth, especially when they have the resources you have. Sarah pulled out a document. Your Honor, I have here a complete list of all births registered in this county in the past 2 weeks. There is no baby Whitmore listed. Preston stood. As Mrs. Whitmore explained, the paperwork hasn't been filed yet. Which is convenient, Sarah said, because it means there's no official record that this baby was ever born to the Whitmores at all. She turned back to Victoria. Mrs. Whitmore, where were you 6 months ago? I'm sorry, what does that have to do with? Please answer the question. Victoria's composure cracked slightly. I was traveling. Europe, mostly. And yet, if this baby is yours, you would have been 6 months pregnant at that time. Are there photographs of you from that trip? I'm sure there are some, yes. Sarah pulled out printed pages from her briefcase. I have here every social media post and public appearance you made over the past year. Interestingly, between 5 months ago and 1 week ago, you're either absent from photos entirely or only shown from the shoulders up. Almost as if you were hiding something. Like a pregnancy, perhaps. Victoria's face had gone pale. I valued my privacy during that time. Or perhaps, Sarah pressed, you were hiding a pregnancy from your husband. A pregnancy that resulted from an affair. A baby that you then abandoned because she didn't fit into your perfect life. Objection. Preston was on his feet. Your Honor, this is pure speculation and harassment of the witness. Judge Morrison looked troubled. Ms. Chun, do you have evidence to support these accusations? I have circumstantial evidence, Your Honor. The gaps in Mrs. Whitmore's public appearances. The lack of birth records. The fact that the baby was found with a monogrammed blanket bearing Mrs. Whitmore's initials. Most tellingly, I have the pattern of behavior since the baby was found. The attempts to recover the child through illegal means rather than proper legal channels. This is outrageous, Victoria said, her voice rising. That baby is my daughter, and this girl stole her from me. Then take a DNA test, Sarah said sharply. Right now. Prove that you're this baby's biological mother. The courtroom fell silent. Everyone stared at Victoria, waiting for her response. Richard Whitmore leaned forward, his eyes on his wife. Even he seemed surprised by Sarah's challenge. Victoria's mouth opened and closed. Her perfect composure had completely shattered. That's not. You can't demand that I. Why not? Sarah pressed. If this baby is yours, a DNA test would prove it beyond any doubt. Unless, of course, you know what the results would show. Judge Morrison leaned forward. Mrs. Whitmore, would you be willing to submit to a DNA test? Victoria looked at her lawyers desperately. Preston whispered something urgently in her ear. Then Richard Whitmore stood, his face a mask of barely controlled anger. Your Honor, he said, his voice tight, I would like to request a brief recess. I need to speak with my wife. Privately. The look he gave Victoria was not the look of a concerned husband. It was the look of a man who had just realized he had been lied to. And in that moment, Maya knew that everything was about to change. Judge Morrison granted the recess, and the courtroom erupted into whispered conversations. Maya watched as Richard Whitmore gripped his wife's arm and practically dragged her out of the courtroom, their lawyers scrambling to follow. Victoria's face had gone from pale to gray, and she stumbled slightly in her expensive heels as her husband pulled her along. Sarah returned to their table, a grim satisfaction on her face. That went better than I expected, she said quietly to Maya. Did you see his face? Richard Whitmore had no idea. He's just now realizing that his wife has been lying to him. What happens now? Maya asked, holding Hope a little closer. The baby had been remarkably quiet throughout the hearing, as if she somehow understood the importance of what was happening. Now we wait. Either they come back and Victoria agrees to the DNA test, which will prove she's been lying, or they refuse, which makes them look guilty. Either way, we've created reasonable doubt about their story. Sarah glanced at the door where the Whitmores had disappeared. But Maya, I need to warn you. Cornered animals are dangerous. If Victoria feels exposed, there's no telling what she might do. Father Michael leaned forward from the row behind them. That man looked furious. I almost felt sorry for her. Almost. Don't, Agnes said sharply, her usually kind face stern. She abandoned a helpless baby. Whatever happens to her now, she brought it on herself. The recess stretched from 15 minutes to 30, then to 45. Maya could see Judge Morrison checking his watch impatiently through the window of his chambers. Finally, after nearly an hour, the courtroom door opened. But only Richard Whitmore's lawyers entered. Preston and his team looked shaken, their earlier confidence completely gone. They huddled together, speaking in urgent whispers. Victoria and Richard were nowhere to be seen. Judge Morrison returned to the bench, clearly annoyed by the delay. "Mr. Preston, where are your clients?" Preston stood slowly, and Maya could see him choosing his words very carefully. "Your Honor, Mrs. Whitmore is not feeling well. The stress of this situation has been overwhelming for her. Mr. Whitmore has taken her home to rest." "I see," Judge Morrison said, his tone making it clear he didn't believe this for a second. "And what about the DNA test that was proposed?" Preston cleared his throat. "Your Honor, my clients feel that such a test is unnecessary and invasive. They maintain their position that the child belongs to them and should be returned immediately. But they won't prove it with a simple DNA test?" Sarah stood, her voice sharp with barely concealed triumph. "Your Honor, their refusal speaks volumes. If Victoria Whitmore truly gave birth to this baby, she would have no reason to refuse the test. The only reason to refuse is if she knows the test would expose her lies." "We're not refusing," Preston said quickly. "We're simply saying it's unnecessary at this time. We have Mrs. Whitmore's testimony, and we will have the security footage showing Miss Torres taking the baby from the Whitmore property." "Footage that conveniently hasn't been provided yet," Sarah interrupted. "Your Honor, I move to dismiss this petition entirely. The Whitmores have failed to provide any concrete evidence that this baby is theirs. They've refused to take a DNA test. They've left the courtroom rather than answer difficult questions. And their behavior since the baby was found has been consistently suspicious and, in some cases, criminal." Judge Morrison was quiet for a long moment, his fingers steepled in front of his face. Maya held her breath, afraid to hope. Could it really be this simple? Could they actually win? "Mr. Preston," the judge finally said, "I'm troubled by your client's behavior. The refusal to take a DNA test, in particular, raises serious questions. However, I'm also troubled by the lack of concrete evidence on either side. We have Miss Torres' story about finding an abandoned baby, but no physical evidence to support it. No note, no witnesses, nothing but her word." Maya's heart sank. He was going to rule against them. She could hear it in his voice. "Therefore," Judge Morrison continued, "I'm going to order the following. First, both Victoria Whitmore and the baby will undergo DNA testing within 48 hours. If Mrs. Whitmore refuses, I will take that refusal into consideration when making my final ruling. Second, until those results are available and I can make a proper determination, the child will remain in temporary foster care." "No!" Maya gasped before she could stop herself. "You can't take her away from me." The judge looked at Maya with something that might have been sympathy. "Miss Torres, I understand you've grown attached to this child, but you're a 17-year-old homeless minor. The court cannot leave an infant in your care, regardless of how she came to be with you. This is what's best for the baby." "Best for the baby?" Maya stood, her voice shaking with emotion. "I found her abandoned in an alley. I saved her life. I've been taking care of her, feeding her, loving her. And you're going to give her to strangers?" "Maya," Sarah said gently, putting a hand on her arm. "Let me handle this." But Maya couldn't stop. All the fear and stress and anger of the past 3 days came pouring out. That woman threw her away like garbage. She didn't want her. She was going to let her die in that alley. And you're going to reward her? You're going to punish me for doing the right thing. "Miss Torres," Judge Morrison said firmly, "I understand you're upset, but you need to control yourself or I'll have you removed from this courtroom." Tears streamed down Maya's face. Hope, sensing her distress, began to cry too. Maya held her close, rocking her gently, whispering soothing words even as her own heart broke. Sarah stood, her voice professional despite the anger Maya could see in her eyes. Your Honor, I request that if the child must be placed in temporary care, she be placed with Father Michael Harrison at St. Catherine's Church. He has been providing shelter to both Miss Torres and the baby. The baby is familiar with him and with the environment. It would be less traumatic than placing her with complete strangers. Judge Morrison considered this. Father Harrison, are you willing and able to serve as a temporary foster placement for this child? Father Michael stood. Yes, Your Honor. I am. And you understand this is temporary, only until the DNA results are available and I can make a final determination? I understand, Your Honor. Very well. The child will be placed temporarily with Father Harrison. Miss Torres may visit, but only under supervision. He looked at Maya. Young lady, I know this seems harsh to you, but my job is to protect this child's welfare, and that means making sure she's in a stable, appropriate environment while we sort out the truth of this situation. The judge banged his gavel. We'll reconvene in 3 days, once the DNA results are available. This hearing is adjourned. As people began filing out of the courtroom, Maya remained seated, clutching hope. She knew she should feel relieved. They hadn't lost completely. The baby was staying at the church where Maya could still see her. But it felt like a loss anyway. It felt like she was being punished for saving Hope's life. A social worker approached, a middle-aged woman with a kind face but professional detachment. Miss Torres, I need to take the baby now to complete the placement paperwork with Father Harrison. No, Maya whispered, holding Hope tighter. Please, just a few more minutes. Maya, Sarah said softly, you have to let her go, just for now. You'll see her again in a few hours. I promise. With shaking hands, Maya kissed Hope's forehead. I love you, she whispered. I'm going to fix this. I'm going to make sure you're safe. I promise. She handed Hope to the social worker, and it felt like handing over a piece of her heart. Hope immediately began crying harder, her little arms reaching back toward Maya. The sound of the baby's cries as the social worker carried her away was the worst thing Maya had ever heard. Father Michael put a comforting hand on Maya's shoulder. Come on, child. Let's go back to the church. Hope will be waiting for you there. As they left the courtroom, Maya saw Richard Whitmore standing in the hallway, away from his lawyers. He was staring out a window, his hands clenched into fists at his sides. He looked like a man whose entire world had just collapsed around him. Their eyes met for a brief moment. Maya expected to see anger or hatred, but instead she saw something else. Confusion, betrayal, pain. In that moment, Maya realized that Richard Whitmore was as much a victim of Victoria's lies as Hope was. He had wanted a child, had been desperate for an heir, and his wife had denied him that while secretly getting pregnant with another man's baby and then throwing that baby away. Maya felt a sudden, unexpected flash of pity for him. But then she remembered the men breaking into the church, chasing her through the dark streets, and the pity vanished. Whatever pain Richard Whitmore was feeling now, he had still authorized people to terrorize her and Father Michael. He had still tried to take Hope by force. Back at the church, Hope was already settled in a small room next to Father Michael's. Agnes was there, setting up the carrier as a temporary crib, arranging blankets and supplies. When Hope saw Maya, she stopped crying and made a small cooing sound. See, Agnes said gently. She knows you. She knows you're her person. But Maya didn't feel like Hope's person anymore. She felt helpless and useless. The social worker had made it clear that Maya could only hold Hope under supervision, only at scheduled times. She couldn't be alone with her. She couldn't care for her the way she had been doing. That night, Maya lay in her small room, unable to sleep. She could hear Hope crying in the next room, and every instinct in her body screamed at her to go to the baby, to comfort her. But she wasn't allowed. The door to Hope's room was closed, and Father Michael was staying with her to ensure proper supervision. Maya stared at the ceiling, feeling more alone than she had since her grandmother died. She had thought finding Hope had given her life purpose and meaning again. But now that purpose was being taken away from her, one supervised visit at a time. Sometime after midnight, Maya heard a sound outside her window. Car engine. Footsteps. Her body tensed immediately, remembering the last time she had heard those sounds. Were they coming back? Were they going to try again to take hope? Maya crept to the window and looked out carefully. In the dim light from a street lamp, she could see a figure standing on the sidewalk, looking up at the church. It was a man, tall and well-dressed even in the darkness. As Maya watched, the man took a few steps toward the church, then stopped. He stood there for several minutes, just staring at the building. Then he pulled out his phone and made a call. Maya couldn't hear what he was saying, but she could see his body language. Angry, aggressive, demanding. The call lasted several minutes, and the man's gestures became more emphatic. Finally, he ended the call and stood there for a moment longer. Then he turned and walked back to his car. As he passed under the streetlight, Maya got a clear look at his face. It was Richard Whitmore, and he looked like a man planning something terrible. Maya didn't sleep at all that night. She kept watch at her window, afraid Richard Whitmore would return with more men, more threats, more attempts to take hope by force. But he didn't come back. The street remained empty and quiet, and eventually the sun began to rise, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. When morning came, Maya was exhausted but wired with nervous energy. She heard Hope crying in the next room and desperately wanted to go to her, but she forced herself to wait. The rules were clear: supervised visits only. She couldn't risk doing anything that might give the court a reason to keep Hope away from her permanently. Agnes knocked on her door at 7 o'clock, carrying a breakfast tray. "Good morning, sweetheart. You look terrible. Did you sleep at all?" "Richard Whitmore was here last night," Maya said. "Outside the church, just standing there staring. Then he made a phone call and he looked angry. Really angry." Agnes set down the tray and sat beside Maya on the bed. "Did he try to come inside?" "No. He just stood there for a while, then left." "But Agnes, I'm scared. What if he's planning something? What if he tries to take Hope again?" "Father Michael has already spoken to the police about increased patrols in this area," Agnes said reassuringly. "And Sarah is working on getting a restraining order against the Whitmores after what happened the other night. You're safe here. Hope is safe here." But Maya didn't feel safe. She felt like she was waiting for something terrible to happen, like standing on train tracks and hearing the whistle in the distance but not being able to move out of the way. After breakfast, the social worker arrived for Maya's first supervised visit with Hope. The woman's name was Mrs. Patterson, and she sat in a chair in the corner of the room with a clipboard, watching and taking notes while Maya fed Hope and changed her diaper. It felt wrong, being watched like she was some kind of criminal, being monitored while caring for a baby she had risked everything to save. But Maya swallowed her pride and focused on Hope, talking to her softly, singing the lullabies her grandmother used to sing to her when she was small. Hope seemed content in Maya's arms, her tiny fingers wrapping around Maya's thumb, her blue eyes studying Maya's face with that serious expression babies sometimes have. In these moments, Maya could almost forget about courts and DNA tests and wealthy families trying to take Hope away. In these moments, it was just the two of them and everything felt right. Mrs. Patterson's phone buzzed. She checked it, and her eyebrows rose slightly. "Interesting," she murmured, typing something quickly. "What is it?" Maya asked nervously. "Nothing you need to worry about right now," Mrs. Patterson said, but her expression suggested it was definitely something. After the visit ended and Mrs. Patterson took Hope back to Father Michael's care, Sarah arrived at the church looking energized and determined. She had several folders tucked under her arm and a laptop bag over her shoulder. "We need to talk," Sarah said, gesturing for Maya to follow her to the small meeting room Father Michael used for church business. Once they were seated with the door closed, Sarah opened her laptop. "A lot has happened in the past 12 hours. "What do you mean?" Maya leaned forward. "First, the DNA tests have been scheduled for this afternoon. A court-appointed medical technician will come here to collect a sample from Hope, and Victoria Whitmore has been ordered to appear at a medical facility downtown at the same time. If she doesn't show up, the judge will rule against her automatically." "Do you think she'll show up?" Sarah's expression was grim. I don't know. But here's where things get interesting. I have a contact who works at one of the hospitals in the city. She told me, off the record, that Victoria Whitmore was admitted to the emergency room 3 days ago, the same day you found Hope. She was treated for complications from a recent childbirth. Maya's eyes widened. So she did give birth. That proves Hope is her baby. Maybe. Or maybe it proves she gave birth to a baby. But it doesn't prove that baby is Hope. Sarah pulled up some documents on her screen. Here's what I've been able to piece together from various sources. Victoria Whitmore was indeed pregnant. She hid it from most people, including apparently her husband, by claiming she was traveling for extended periods. About 5 days ago, she checked into a private birthing center under a false name. She gave birth with the help of a midwife, but there were complications. She hemorrhaged badly after the birth and had to be rushed to a regular hospital where they have better emergency equipment. And the baby? Maya asked. According to the birthing center's records, which my contact obtained through some creative means I probably shouldn't ask about, the baby was healthy. A girl, 7 pounds 2 ounces. Victoria left the birthing center with the baby the day after giving birth, against medical advice. And then she abandoned her in an alley, Maya said, anger rising in her voice. Even though Hope could have had medical problems. Even though anything could have happened to her. That's what it looks like, yes. Sarah closed her laptop and looked at Maya seriously. But here's the problem. Even if the DNA test proves Victoria is Hope's biological mother, that doesn't automatically mean she loses custody. She would have to be charged with and convicted of child abandonment. And as we've discussed, that's difficult to prove without the note or witnesses. So what do? We find witnesses, Sarah said. Father Michael spent all day yesterday canvassing the area around Chen's restaurant. He found 2 people who saw something that morning. One is a delivery driver who saw a woman matching Victoria's description near the alley around 6 in the morning. The other is the woman who walks her dog every morning. She didn't see Victoria, but she did see you shortly after, carrying the baby carrier and looking distressed. Her testimony supports your version of events. Hope flickered in Maya's chest. That's good, right? That helps us. It helps, but it's not conclusive. The Whitmore's lawyers will argue that these witnesses are mistaken, that anyone can match a general description, that they're just trying to help you because they feel sorry for you. Sarah paused. What we really need is for Victoria Whitmore to confess, or for Richard Whitmore to turn on her. Why would he do that? Because, Sarah said slowly, I don't think he knew anything about this. I think Victoria kept the entire pregnancy secret from him, gave birth secretly, and abandoned the baby secretly. And I think when he found out the baby existed, she told him you had kidnapped her. But after what happened in court yesterday, I think Richard Whitmore is starting to suspect his wife has been lying to him about a lot of things. Maya remembered the look on Richard's face when Sarah challenged Victoria to take a DNA test. The shock and betrayal. He looked like his world was ending. Because it probably was, Sarah said. Richard Whitmore is a proud man, a powerful man. He's built an empire on his reputation. Finding out his wife has been lying to him, possibly cheating on him, definitely abandoning a baby, that destroys everything. His marriage, his reputation, his standing in society. So you think he might tell the truth? Help us. I think he might, Sarah said carefully. If we can reach him, if we can get him away from Victoria and her lawyers and talk to him directly. But that's a big if. He's surrounded by people whose job is to protect him and the family name. Getting through to him won't be easy. A knock on the door interrupted them. Father Michael poked his head in, his expression worried. Sarah, there's someone here to see you. He says it's urgent. Who is it? Richard Whitmore. The room fell silent. Maya and Sarah exchanged shocked looks. He's here, Sarah asked. Right now. Waiting in the sanctuary. He came alone, no lawyers, no security. He says he needs to talk to you about his daughter. Father Michael's expression was uncertain. Should I call the police? After what happened the other night, I don't trust him. Sarah stood, smoothing her jacket. No, don't call them yet. I want to hear what he has to say. But father, stay close just in case. She looked at Maya. You should stay here. If he sees you, it might set him off. But I want to know what he says, Maya protested. I'll tell you everything, I promise. But right now, let me handle this. Sarah gathered her things and headed for the door, then paused. Actually, father, maybe you should bring Hope to this room with Maya, just as a precaution. I don't want her anywhere near Richard Whitmore until we know what he wants. Father Michael nodded and hurried off. A few minutes later, he returned with Hope, still sleeping peacefully. He handed her carefully to Maya. I'll be right outside the door if you need me, he said. After he left, Maya sat holding Hope, her heart racing. Richard Whitmore was here in the church alone. Was this a trick? A trap? Or was he really having second thoughts about protecting his wife? Maya pressed her ear against the door, trying to hear what was being said in the sanctuary. The voices were too distant to make out individual words, but she could hear the tone. Sarah's voice, calm and professional, and Richard Whitmore's voice, louder, more emotional than Maya had heard before. He sounded angry, but not at Sarah. Someone else. The conversation went on for nearly 20 minutes. Maya stayed pressed against the door the entire time, straining to hear. Finally, she heard footsteps approaching. The door opened, and Sarah came in, followed by Father Michael. Both looked stunned. If you're enjoying this story, please subscribe to the channel. Your support keeps us motivated and reminds us that our stories are making a difference in people's lives. What happened? Maya asked desperately. What did he say? Sarah sat down heavily in a chair, like her legs wouldn't hold her up anymore. He knows, she said quietly. Victoria confessed everything to him last night. She admitted she had an affair. She admitted the baby isn't his. She admitted she abandoned Hope in that alley and told him it was a kidnapping to cover up what she'd done. Maya felt dizzy. She confessed? Just like that? Not just like that. According to Richard, he confronted her after we left the courthouse yesterday. He told her he was going to demand the DNA test regardless of what she wanted, because he needed to know the truth. She broke down, told him everything. The affair, the secret pregnancy, the abandonment. All of it. And he believed her? He had no choice but to believe her. Too many pieces fit together. The hidden pregnancy, the lack of birth records, her behavior in court, all of it. Sarah looked at Maya with an expression that was almost pity. Richard Whitmore is a broken man. His wife betrayed him in the worst possible way. She got pregnant with another man's child and threw that child away like garbage rather than face the consequences. So what does this mean? Maya asked. Will he help us? Will he testify against Victoria? Sarah nodded slowly. Yes, he's willing to testify. He's willing to tell the truth about what Victoria told him. He's even willing to provide financial support for Hope's care, wherever she ends up. Wherever she ends up? Maya's voice rose. What does that mean? She's not going to the Whitmores, and she's not going to some random foster family. She's staying with me. Maya, Sarah said gently, even if Richard testifies, even if we prove Victoria abandoned Hope, that doesn't automatically mean you get custody. You're still 17 and homeless. The court has to consider what's best for Hope. I am what's best for Hope, Maya said fiercely. I saved her life. I love her. I would do anything for her. I know you would, and I'm going to fight for you to keep her. But you need to understand that the court might still decide. No. Maya stood, holding Hope protectively. I won't lose her. I can't lose her. She's all I have left. Sarah stood too and put her hands on Maya's shoulders. Then we fight. We use Richard's testimony. We show that you acted selflessly and courageously. We demonstrate that you're capable of caring for Hope with proper support. And we pray that the judge sees what I see when I look at you and Hope together. A girl who became a mother not through biology, but through love and courage and sacrifice. Tears streamed down Maya's face. Do you really think we can win? I think we have a chance. And sometimes that's all you need. Sarah smiled. Now let's get ready for those DNA tests. Because in 3 days we're going back to that courtroom, and this time we're going to have the truth on our side. As Sarah left to prepare for the hearing, Maya sat with Hope, gently rocking her. Outside the window, storm clouds were gathering on the horizon. A storm was coming in more ways than one. But for the first time since this nightmare began, Maya felt a flicker of real hope. The truth was coming out. And maybe, just maybe, the truth would be enough to keep her and Hope together. The DNA testing took less than 10 minutes. A quiet medical technician arrived at the church with her equipment, gently swabbed the inside of Hope's cheek, sealed the sample in a sterile container, and left with barely a word. Such a simple procedure to determine something so monumental. Sarah had texted Maya an hour later to confirm that Victoria Whitmore had shown up for her test as ordered, though according to Sarah's source at the facility, Victoria had looked like she was going to her own execution. She had arrived without Richard, flanked only by her lawyers, and had left immediately after the test was completed. Now came the waiting. The lab had promised results within 48 hours, which meant they would have the answer before the next court hearing. But those 48 hours felt like 48 years to Maya. Every minute dragged by with excruciating slowness. Every hour brought new worries, new fears, new what-ifs that kept her awake at night. On the second day of waiting, something unexpected happened. Maya was in the church's small kitchen helping Agnes prepare lunch when Father Michael came rushing in, his face flushed with excitement. "Maya, you need to see this. Turn on the television. Channel 7. Now." Agnes grabbed the remote and switched on the small TV they kept in the corner of the kitchen. The local news was on, and Maya's stomach dropped when she saw what was being broadcast. It was Richard Whitmore standing at a podium in what looked like a press conference. Behind him were logos for several of his companies. He looked tired, older somehow than he had appeared in court just days ago, but his voice was strong and clear as he spoke. "I've called this press conference to address rumors and speculation that have been circulating about my family over the past week," Richard was saying. "It has come to my attention that my wife, Victoria Whitmore, gave birth to a child without my knowledge approximately 1 week ago. This child was subsequently abandoned, and through a series of events that are now being investigated by the authorities, ended up in the temporary care of a young woman named Maya Torres." The reporters in the room erupted with questions, but Richard held up his hand for silence. "Please let me finish. I have recently learned that my wife concealed this pregnancy from me and that the child is not biologically mine. When the baby was found and brought to my attention, my wife told me the child had been kidnapped from our home. I now know this was a lie. The baby was not kidnapped. She was abandoned, left alone in an alley where anything could have happened to her." Maya's hand flew to her mouth. He was doing it. He was actually telling the truth publicly, in front of cameras, destroying his own reputation and his wife's to protect Hope and clear Maya's name. "I want to be absolutely clear," Richard continued, his voice hardening. "I had no knowledge of this pregnancy or this abandonment. I was lied to by my wife, and I in turn inadvertently perpetuated those lies in court. Miss Torres is not a kidnapper. She is, by all accounts, a hero who saved an innocent child's life. I am filing for divorce from Victoria Whitmore, and I am cooperating fully with the police investigation into the abandonment of this child." The reporters erupted again, shouting questions over each other. Richard pointed to one. "Mr. Whitmore, are you saying your wife should be arrested?" "I'm saying that anyone who abandons a helpless infant should face the full consequences under the law, regardless of their wealth or social standing." "What about the child? What happens to her now?" Richard's expression softened slightly. "That will be up to the courts. While the child is not biologically mine, I bear some responsibility for what happened. I will be establishing a trust fund for her care and education, regardless of where she ends up. Every child deserves a chance at a good life, and this child will have that chance." "Mr. Whitmore, where is your wife now?" Richard's jaw tightened. "I have no idea, and frankly, I don't care. I have nothing more to say about Victoria. This press conference is about setting the record straight and ensuring that an innocent young woman is not punished for doing the right thing. Thank you." He walked away from the podium as reporters continued shouting questions. The news broadcast cut back to the studio, where the anchors looked stunned. Breaking news this afternoon as real estate magnate Richard Whitmore drops a bombshell about his wife and a mysterious abandoned baby, one anchor said. We'll continue to follow this developing story. Agnes turned off the television. The kitchen fell silent. Maya stood frozen, trying to process what she had just witnessed. He did it, she whispered. He actually did it. He told everyone the truth. Father Michael nodded slowly. That took tremendous courage. He just destroyed his marriage, his wife's reputation, probably his own standing in high society. All to tell the truth. Do you think it will help Maya's case? Agnes asked. It has to, Father Michael said. The man just publicly declared Maya innocent in front of the entire city. The judge would have to be a fool to rule against her now. But Sarah, when she arrived at the church an hour later, was more cautious. It helps tremendously, she admitted. But we can't get overconfident. Victoria's lawyers are going to argue that Richard is just a bitter husband seeking revenge on his cheating wife. They'll say his testimony is tainted by his anger and can't be trusted. But he's telling the truth, Maya protested. I know that, and you know that, and probably the judge knows that. But Victoria's lawyers are very good at creating doubt. We still need to be prepared for them to fight this with everything they have. Sarah pulled out her phone and showed Maya a news alert. Look at this. Victoria's legal team just released a statement. Maya read the statement on the screen, her anger growing with each word. It claimed that Victoria was devastated by her husband's betrayal, that she had been suffering from severe postpartum depression when she made some poor decisions, and that she was checking herself into a private treatment facility for her mental health. The statement painted Victoria as a victim, a woman struggling with mental illness, rather than a criminal who had abandoned her baby. This is such garbage, Maya said, shoving the phone back at Sarah. She's not a victim. Hope is the victim. I'm the victim of her lies. Victoria is just trying to escape responsibility. I know, Sarah said, but this is actually a good thing for us. Do you see what she's doing? She's essentially admitting that she made poor decisions regarding Hope. She's not denying abandoning her anymore. She's just trying to excuse it with mental illness. Father Michael frowned. Can she use that as a defense? She can try, Sarah said. Postpartum depression is real and serious. But it doesn't excuse abandoning a baby in an alley. Plenty of women suffer from postpartum depression without committing crimes. The law recognizes that mental illness can be a mitigating factor, but it doesn't make someone immune from consequences. That evening, Maya's supervised visit with Hope was interrupted by Mrs. Patterson's phone ringing. The social worker stepped into the hallway to take the call, leaving Maya alone with Hope for the first time in days. Maya knew she should probably wait for Mrs. Patterson to come back, but she couldn't help savoring these few private moments. Did you see the news today? Maya whispered to Hope, who was looking up at her with those serious blue eyes. The whole city knows about you now. Everyone knows your story. You're going to be okay, little one. I'm going to make sure of it. Hope made a small cooing sound, and Maya's heart melted. How was it possible to love someone so much after only a few days? But she did love Hope, with a fierce protectiveness that surprised her with its intensity. Mrs. Patterson returned, her expression thoughtful. That was my supervisor, she said. The DNA results came back early. They're being delivered to the judge and both legal teams tonight. Maya's breath caught. Already? What do they say? I don't know the details, but there's going to be an emergency hearing tomorrow morning at 8. Everyone has been notified. Mrs. Patterson looked at Maya with something that might have been sympathy. Get some rest tonight, Maya. Tomorrow is going to be a big day. But Maya couldn't rest. She lay awake all night, her mind racing through every possible scenario. What if the DNA test somehow didn't prove what they all knew to be true? What if Victoria's lawyers found some way to twist the results? What if the judge still ruled against her despite everything? At dawn, Maya gave up on sleep and got dressed in the nicest clothes she had. A simple blue dress that Agnes had bought for her. Agnes helped her with her hair, pulling it back in a neat ponytail, and even found some light makeup to help hide the dark circles under Maya's eyes from lack of sleep. "You look beautiful," Agnes said, squeezing Maya's shoulders. "And strong. You're going to walk into that courtroom with your head held high, and you're going to fight for that baby with everything you have." Sarah arrived at 7:30 to drive them all to the courthouse. In the car, she briefed Maya on what to expect. The DNA results will be read into the record. There may be testimony from Richard Whitmore. Victoria may or may not show up. Either way, the judge is going to make a ruling today about Hope's custody. "What do you think will happen?" Maya asked quietly. Sarah was silent for a moment. "Honestly, I think we have a good chance." Richard's public statement changed everything. He gave you credibility and gave the judge political cover to rule in your favor. But Maya, even if we win custody today, there's still going to be a long road ahead. You're going to need support, resources, a place to live. Being granted custody is just the first step. "I know," Maya said, "but it's the most important step. Everything else we can figure out together." The courthouse was surrounded by news vans when they arrived. Reporters with cameras crowded the entrance, shouting questions at anyone who looked like they might be involved in the case. Father Michael and Agnes formed a protective barrier around Maya as they pushed through the crowd and into the building. Inside the courtroom, it was already packed. Maya recognized several of the reporters from the news, along with various other people she assumed were legal observers or just curious members of the public. The gallery was full, with people standing along the back wall. And there, sitting alone on what had been the Whitmore side of the courtroom, was Richard Whitmore. He looked haggard, like he hadn't slept any better than Maya had. When he saw Maya enter, he nodded slightly. It wasn't exactly friendly, but it wasn't hostile either. It was acknowledgement, respect, maybe, for someone else who had been hurt by Victoria's lies. Victoria herself was nowhere to be seen. Her lawyers sat at their table, looking decidedly less confident than they had at the first hearing. Harold Preston's silver hair seemed to have more gray in it than before, and his expensive suit looked rumpled, like he had slept in it. "All rise," the bailiff called, and Judge Morrison entered. The courtroom fell silent as everyone stood, then sat again at the judge's gesture. Judge Morrison looked around the packed courtroom, then down at the documents in front of him. "This has become quite the spectacle," he said dryly. "I want to remind everyone that this is a courtroom, not a circus. I will have order or I will clear this room. Understood?" A murmur of agreement rippled through the gallery. "Good. Now, we're here for an emergency hearing regarding the custody of baby Whitmore, also known as Hope. I have received the DNA test results, and they are definitive." He paused, and Maya felt like her heart might stop. "The test confirms that Victoria Whitmore is the biological mother of this child. However, the test also confirms that Richard Whitmore is not the biological father." A buzz of whispers filled the courtroom. Judge Morrison banged his gavel. "Quiet. Mr. Preston, is your client going to be joining us today?" Preston stood. "No, Your Honor. Mrs. Whitmore has checked herself into a psychiatric facility for treatment of severe postpartum depression and—" "How convenient," Judge Morrison interrupted, his tone making it clear what he thought of this development. "So she admits to being the mother, but conveniently cannot face the consequences of her actions?" Preston shifted uncomfortably. "Your Honor, my client is genuinely suffering from—" "Save it, Mr. Preston. I've seen this tactic before. A wealthy defendant commits a crime, then suddenly discovers they have a mental health crisis that requires immediate treatment at a luxury facility, conveniently making them unavailable for legal proceedings." The judge's eyes were hard. "It won't work here. Based on the evidence presented, including Mr. Whitmore's testimony and public statements, I am issuing a warrant for Victoria Whitmore's arrest on charges of child abandonment and filing a false police report. She can receive whatever treatment she needs in custody." Maya felt a surge of fierce satisfaction. Finally, Victoria was going to face consequences for what she had done. "Now," Judge Morrison continued, "we need to address the question of this child's permanent custody. Mr. Preston, does your client wish to retain parental rights?" Preston hesitated, then said quietly, "Given the circumstances, Your Honor, Mrs. Whitmore is willing to voluntarily terminate her parental rights." I'm sure she is, the judge said coldly. Mr. Whitmore, you are not the biological father. Do you wish to seek custody of this child? Richard stood. No, Your Honor. I bear no ill will toward the child, and as I stated publicly, I will provide financial support for her care. But I am not her father, and I do not wish to raise another man's child as my own. Judge Morrison nodded. Understandable. Which brings us to Miss Torres. His eyes found Maya in the courtroom. Young lady, stand up please. Maya stood on shaking legs, her hands gripping the table in front of her for support. Miss Torres, you found this baby abandoned and chose to help her rather than walk away. You sought assistance from responsible adults. You provided care for this child. And you fought to protect her even when it would have been easier to give up. The judge paused. However, you are 17 years old and currently homeless. The law requires that I consider the child's best interests above all else. Can you explain to me why I should award custody of an infant to a homeless teenager? Maya's mouth went dry. This was it. This was her chance to fight for hope, and she couldn't find the words. She looked at Sarah desperately. Sarah stood. Your Honor, if I may address the court? Go ahead, Miss Chun. Your Honor, while it's true that Miss Torres is currently experiencing housing insecurity, she is not without resources or support. Father Michael Harrison has offered to allow Miss Torres and hope to continue living at the church rectory while Miss Torres completes her education and works toward independence. Additionally, several members of the community have come forward offering employment and assistance. Sarah pulled out a folder. I have letters here from 5 different employers willing to hire Miss Torres, as well as letters of support from Father Harrison, Agnes Martinez, who works at the church, and several teachers from Miss Torres's high school who attest to her character and capabilities. Judge Morrison took the folder and began reading through it. The courtroom was so quiet Maya could hear her own heartbeat pounding in her ears. Finally, the judge looked up. Miss Torres, if I grant you custody of this child, it will be the most difficult thing you've ever done. You will be responsible for another human life while you're still practically a child yourself. You will have to finish school, find work, provide for Hope's needs. It won't be easy. Do you understand that? Yes, Your Honor, Maya said, her voice shaking but clear. I understand. But I also understand that Hope needs someone who loves her, someone who will fight for her, someone who sees her as a blessing, not a burden. I can be that person. I want to be that person. Judge Morrison was quiet for a long moment, studying Maya's face. Then, finally, he spoke. Very well. I am granting temporary custody of Hope to Maya Torres, to be reviewed in 6 months. Miss Torres, you will check in monthly with a social worker. You will maintain stable housing and employment. You will ensure Hope receives proper medical care and meets all developmental milestones. If you fail to meet these requirements, custody will be revoked. Do you understand? Tears streamed down Maya's face. Yes, Your Honor. I understand. Thank you. Thank you so much. Don't thank me yet, Judge Morrison said. You have a hard road ahead of you, but I believe you can do this. Court is adjourned. The gavel came down, and suddenly Maya was surrounded by people. Agnes pulling her into a hug. Father Michael shaking her hand with tears in his eyes. Sarah grinning triumphantly. And beyond them, she could see reporters rushing out of the courtroom to file their stories. Cameras flashing, people talking excitedly. But none of it mattered. All that mattered was that Hope was hers. Really, truly hers. Maya had won. The days following the custody hearing passed in a blur of paperwork, interviews, and adjustments. Maya officially moved into a small apartment attached to the church rectory, a space that Father Michael had cleared out and furnished with help from members of the congregation. It had a bedroom, a tiny kitchen, and a bathroom. Nothing fancy, but it was clean and warm, and most importantly, it was theirs. Agnes had organized a donation drive, and people from the church and community brought everything a baby could need. A proper crib, clothes in various sizes for Hope to grow into, diapers, formula, toys, and blankets. Maya was overwhelmed by the generosity of strangers who had heard her story and wanted to help. Mrs. Patterson, the social worker, came by twice a week to check on them. The visits that had once felt like surveillance now felt more like support. Mrs. Patterson would watch Maya care for Hope, ask questions about feeding schedules and doctor appointments, and offer advice when Maya seemed uncertain. Slowly, Maya began to trust her. "You're doing really well," Mrs. Patterson said during one visit, watching Maya expertly change Hope's diaper while keeping up a steady stream of chatter that made the baby coo with delight. "Better than many first-time mothers I've worked with, honestly. You have good instincts." "I'm just doing what feels right," Maya said, lifting Hope and holding her against her shoulder. "And I read everything I can find about babies. The library has been very helpful. Speaking of which, I heard you enrolled in online classes to finish your high school diploma?" Maya nodded. "I start next week. Father Michael helped me register. I can do the coursework in the evenings after Hope goes to sleep. It'll take me about 6 months to finish." "And you're working at Chen's restaurant?" 3 mornings a week, washing dishes and helping with food prep," Maya confirmed. "Mr. Chun has been amazing. He lets me bring Hope with me, and his wife watches her while I work. It's not much money, but it helps. And Richard Whitmore's trust fund covers Hope's medical expenses and anything else she needs." Mrs. Patterson made notes on her tablet. "I'm impressed, Maya. You're managing to balance childcare, work, and education. That's not easy, even for adults with more resources." After Mrs. Patterson left, Maya fed Hope and put her down for a nap. She stood over the crib for a moment, watching the baby sleep. Hope had grown in the 2 weeks since the custody hearing. Her cheeks were fuller, her body longer. She was thriving, and knowing that Maya had played a part in that filled her with a pride she had never experienced before. A knock at the door interrupted her thoughts. Maya opened it to find Sarah standing there with a serious expression. "Can I come in? We need to talk." Maya's stomach knotted with anxiety. "Is something wrong? Is it about the custody?" "No, nothing like that. The custody is secure. But there's been a development regarding Victoria Whitmore." Sarah came inside and sat at the small kitchen table. "She's been arrested. They found her at the psychiatric facility yesterday and took her into custody. She's been formally charged with child abandonment, filing a false police report, and child endangerment." Maya sat down across from Sarah, processing this information. Part of her felt satisfaction that Victoria was finally facing consequences. But another part felt something more complicated. What happens now? There will be a trial. Victoria's lawyers are already trying to negotiate a plea deal, but the district attorney is pushing for jail time. They want to make an example of her, show that wealthy people can't just buy their way out of crimes involving children. Sarah pulled out some papers. "But here's the thing, Maya. You're going to be called as a witness. You'll have to testify about finding Hope, about the letter, about everything that happened." "I'll do it," Maya said without hesitation. "I'll tell them exactly what happened. It won't be easy. Victoria's lawyers are going to try to discredit you. They'll bring up your age, your housing situation, anything they can use to make you look unreliable." "Let them try," Maya said firmly. "I'm not afraid of telling the truth." Sarah smiled. "That's what I was hoping you'd say. The trial is scheduled for 3 months from now. We'll have plenty of time to prepare you." After Sarah left, Maya spent the evening doing her online coursework while Hope slept nearby. She was working through a history assignment when her phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. She almost ignored it, but curiosity got the better of her. The message was brief. "This is Richard Whitmore. I'd like to meet with you, just to talk. Would you be willing?" Maya stared at the message for a long time. Richard Whitmore wanted to meet with her? Why? She thought about ignoring it, but something made her respond. "Why do you want to meet?" The reply came quickly. "I want to see Hope. Not to take her or interfere with the custody. Just to see her. And to apologize to you properly, in person, for everything my wife put you through." Maya bit her lip, thinking. She typed back, "I need to talk to my lawyer first." "Of course. Take whatever time you need." Maya immediately called Sarah and explained the situation. Sarah was quiet for a moment, then said, "It's your decision, Maya, but if you do meet with him, I should be there. Just as a precaution." Do you think it's a trap? No, I don't. I think he's a man dealing with a lot of guilt and grief, and he wants closure. But it's still better to be safe. After some thought, Maya agreed to meet Richard at the church with Sarah present the following afternoon. When the time came, Maya's hands shook slightly as she prepared Hope's diaper bag. She dressed the baby in one of the nicer outfits from the donations, a soft pink dress with tiny flowers embroidered on it. Richard Whitmore arrived exactly on time, looking more casual than Maya had ever seen him. He wore jeans and a simple button-down shirt, no suit or tie. He looked tired but calmer than he had in court. Father Michael showed him into the small meeting room where Maya waited with Hope in her arms and Sarah by her side. Richard stopped in the doorway when he saw the baby, his expression difficult to read. "Hello, Maya," he said quietly. "Thank you for agreeing to see me." "Mr. Whitmore," Maya replied, equally quiet. "Please, call me Richard." He took a few steps closer, his eyes on Hope. "May I sit?" Maya nodded, and Richard sat across from her. For a long moment, he just looked at Hope, who was awake and alert, staring at this stranger with curious eyes. "She's beautiful," Richard said, his voice thick with emotion. "How old is she now?" "About 3 weeks," Maya said. "The doctors think she was only 2 or 3 days old when I found her." Richard winced at the word found, a reminder of how Hope had come into Maya's life. "I want you to know," he said, looking directly at Maya now, "that I had no idea, none. If I had known Victoria was pregnant, if I had known about Hope's existence, I would never have allowed what happened. Never." "I know," Maya said softly. "I could tell in court that you didn't know. You looked as shocked as everyone else. I've spent the past few weeks trying to understand how my wife could do something so monstrous, how she could carry a child for 9 months and then just throw her away." Richard's hands clenched into fists. "I keep thinking about what could have happened. If you hadn't been in that alley at that exact moment, Hope could have died. She could have been taken by someone with bad intentions. Anything could have happened. But it didn't," Maya said firmly. "I was there. I found her. And she's safe now." Richard nodded, wiping at his eyes with the back of his hand. "I'm sorry. I promised myself I wouldn't break down. But seeing her, knowing how close we came to losing her." He took a deep breath, composing himself. "I also wanted to apologize to you, Maya, for the men who broke into the church and chased you, for the things my lawyers said about you in court, for not seeing through Victoria's lies sooner. You saved my wife's daughter, and instead of being grateful, we terrorized you. That was wrong. Unforgivable." "You were lied to," Maya said. "Victoria told you I kidnapped Hope. You were just trying to protect a child you thought was yours. I understand that." "You're very gracious," Richard said. "More gracious than I deserve." He reached into his pocket and pulled out an envelope. "I know I've already set up the trust fund for Hope's expenses, but I wanted to give you this personally. It's a check to cover your personal expenses, things the trust doesn't cover. New clothes for yourself, books for your classes, whatever you need." Maya shook her head. "I can't take your money." "Please," Richard said. "Let me do this. Let me help in some way. I can't change what happened, but I can make sure you have the resources to give Hope the best possible life." Sarah leaned over and whispered to Maya, "Take it. There's no strings attached and you do need help. That's not charity, it's justice. He owes this to both of you." Reluctantly, Maya took the envelope. "Thank you." "Would you?" Richard hesitated, then continued. "Would you let me hold her? Just for a moment? I promise I'm not trying to take her from you. I just want to hold her once. To say goodbye to the life I thought I would have." Maya looked at Sarah, who gave a small nod. Slowly, carefully, Maya stood and walked around the table. She placed Hope in Richard's arms, showing him how to support her head. Richard looked down at Hope, and a tear rolled down his cheek. "Hello, little one," he whispered. "I'm sorry I'm not your father. I'm sorry I can't be part of your life. But I want you to know that you're going to be okay. You have someone who loves you very much. Someone brave and kind who will take care of you." Hope stared up at Richard with those serious blue eyes, and for just a moment, She smiled. It was probably just gas. Maya knew babies this young didn't really smile yet. But Richard smiled back anyway, a genuine smile that lit up his whole face. After a few minutes, Richard handed Hope back to Maya. "Thank you," he said. "That meant more to me than you could know. Will you come visit her again?" Maya asked, surprising herself with the question. Richard looked startled. Would you want that?" "I don't know," Maya admitted. "Maybe, not often, but maybe sometimes. She should know that there are people who cared about her, even people who aren't related to her." "I would like that," Richard said softly. "Very much, but only if you're comfortable with it. This is your daughter now, Maya. You make the rules." After Richard left, Sarah turned to Maya with an expression of respect. "That was very mature of you, offering to let him visit. Not many people would be that generous to someone who had threatened them." "He's not a bad person," Maya said, settling Hope back in her carrier. "He was just a man who was lied to and manipulated by someone he trusted. I know what that feels like, to have your world turned upside down by things outside your control." That night, after Hope was asleep, Maya sat at her small kitchen table and opened the envelope Richard had given her. Inside was a check for $50,000. Maya stared at the amount, hardly able to believe it. $50,000. More money than she had ever imagined having. Enough to secure a better apartment, to buy a reliable car, to have a real safety net for emergencies. She thought about her grandmother, about what Rosa would say if she could see Maya now. She would probably tell Maya to be smart with the money, to save most of it, to use it to build a better future for herself and Hope. "I wish you were here, Grandma," Maya whispered into the quiet apartment. "I wish you could meet Hope. I wish you could see that I'm doing what you taught me. Being kind, being brave, taking care of someone who needs me." The apartment was silent except for the soft sound of Hope's breathing from the other room. Maya looked around at their small space, at the donated furniture and secondhand baby equipment. It wasn't much, but it was theirs. They were building a life together, one day at a time. Maya's phone buzzed with a text from Agnes. "How did the meeting go with Richard?" Maya typed back, "Better than expected. I think everything is going to be okay." And for the first time since her grandmother died, Maya actually believed it. The road ahead would still be difficult. She still had to finish school, find better employment, navigate the challenges of being a teenage mother. But she wasn't alone anymore. She had Hope, and Hope had her, and together they would face whatever came next. Maya went to check on Hope one more time before going to bed herself. The baby was sleeping peacefully, her tiny fists curled near her face, her chest rising and falling with each breath. Maya gently touched Hope's soft cheek. "We're going to make it, little one," she whispered. "We're going to build a good life together. I promise." And Maya Torres, the homeless girl who had found an abandoned baby and refused to walk away, always kept her promises. 3 months passed with a rhythm that Maya had never experienced before. Wake up with Hope's early morning cries. Feed her, change her, play with her. Work at Chen's restaurant 3 mornings a week. Study online in the afternoons while Hope napped. Evening routines of bath time, bedtime stories, and gentle rocking until Hope fell asleep. Then more studying before collapsing into bed herself, exhausted but content. It was hard, harder than anything Maya had ever done. Some nights she fell asleep over her textbooks. Some mornings she was so tired she could barely function. But every time she looked at Hope, every time the baby smiled at her or reached for her or said, "Mama," in her babbling baby talk, Maya knew it was worth it. Hope was thriving. At her 2-month checkup, the pediatrician had been impressed with her development. She was gaining weight properly, hitting all her milestones, and seemed happy and secure. "Whatever you're doing," the doctor had told Maya, "keep doing it. This is a very healthy, well-adjusted baby." Maya was thriving too in her own way. She had completed 2 of her required courses and was on track to receive her high school diploma in 3 more months. Mr. Chan had increased her hours and her pay, and she had even started saving money from her paychecks, adding to what remained of Richard's generous gift after she had bought some essential items. Richard had visited twice more, always with advance notice, always respecting Maya's boundaries. The visits were brief and bittersweet. He would hold Hope for a few minutes, talk to her softly, then leave with tears in his eyes. Maya found herself feeling sorry for him, this powerful man who had lost so much because of his wife's betrayal. Victoria's trial was scheduled to begin in 1 week, and Maya was preparing to testify. Sarah had been working with her for weeks, conducting practice sessions where she played the role of Victoria's aggressive defense attorney, asking harsh questions and trying to rattle Maya. At first, Maya had struggled, getting defensive and emotional. But with practice, she had learned to stay calm, to answer simply and truthfully, to not let the lawyers get under her skin. "You're ready," Sarah told her after their final practice session. "Just remember, tell the truth and don't let them make you angry. That's all you need to do." The day before the trial was set to begin, Maya received an unexpected visitor. She was feeding Hope lunch, carefully spooning mashed sweet potatoes into the baby's eager mouth, when Father Michael knocked on her door. "Maya, there's someone here to see you. She says her name is Catherine Wells." Maya frowned. The name meant nothing to her. Did she say what she wants? No, just that it's important and relates to Hope's case. Curious and a little nervous, Maya cleaned Hope's face, settled her in her playpen with some toys, and followed Father Michael to the meeting room. The woman waiting there was perhaps 30 years old, with dark hair pulled back in a ponytail and kind brown eyes that reminded Maya a little of her grandmother. "Miss Torres," the woman said, standing and extending her hand. "Thank you for seeing me. My name is Catherine Wells. I'm a nurse and midwife. I was the one who helped deliver Hope." Maya's eyes widened. This was Victoria's midwife, the one who had been with her when Hope was born. "Why are you here?" Catherine sat back down, and Maya could see her hands were trembling slightly. "Because I can't stay silent anymore. Because what Victoria did was wrong, and I need to tell the truth about what happened that night." "I'm calling my lawyer," Maya said immediately, pulling out her phone. "Good," Catherine said. "You should. What I have to say, she needs to hear it too." Sarah arrived within 30 minutes, and the four of them sat in the meeting room while Catherine told her story. "I run a small private birthing center," Catherine began. "We cater to wealthy clients who want privacy and personalized care. Victoria came to me about 7 months ago, using a false name initially. She was obviously pregnant, obviously hiding it. She offered me double my usual fee if I would keep her visit completely confidential." "Did she tell you why she was hiding the pregnancy?" Sarah asked, taking notes. "Not at first, but over the months, during our prenatal visits, bits and pieces came out. She had an affair with someone, got pregnant, and her husband didn't know. She was panicking because she couldn't hide it much longer and couldn't let Richard find out." Catherine's expression was pained. "I should have refused to help her. But the money was good, and I convinced myself I was just providing medical care, not enabling anything wrong." "What happened when Hope was born?" Maya asked quietly. "Victoria went into labor 5 weeks early. It was a difficult birth and there were complications. Hope was fine, healthy despite being premature. But Victoria hemorrhaged badly after the delivery. I couldn't stop the bleeding on my own. I had to call an ambulance and send her to the hospital." Catherine's voice shook. Before the ambulance came, while she was bleeding and scared, Victoria kept saying over and over that she couldn't keep the baby, that she had to get rid of it somehow. "Did she say how?" Sarah leaned forward intently. "Not specifically, but she made me promise not to tell the hospital staff about the baby. She said the baby was staying with me at the birthing center for a few days while she recovered. I agreed stupidly. I thought maybe she would come to her senses. Maybe she would realize she couldn't just abandon her child. But she didn't," Maya said. Catherine shook her head. "She discharged herself from the hospital the next day, against medical advice. She came back to the birthing center, still weak from blood loss, and demanded I give her the baby. I did. She left with Hope, and I thought maybe everything would be okay. Maybe she had worked something out. But then 2 days later, you saw the news about a baby being found abandoned," Sarah guessed. "Yes, and I knew immediately it was Hope. I recognized the blanket, the carrier, everything. I felt sick. I had helped Victoria hide that pregnancy, helped deliver that baby, and then Victoria had thrown her away like garbage. Tears streamed down Catherine's face. I wanted to come forward immediately, but I was terrified. Victoria had paid me in cash under the table. If I admitted what I'd done, I could lose my nursing license, face legal charges, lose everything I'd built. So why are you coming forward now? Maya asked. Because I can't live with myself anymore. Because that baby deserves justice, and you deserve support. Because Victoria needs to be held accountable, and my testimony can help make that happen. Catherine looked directly at Maya. I know I don't deserve forgiveness for my role in this, but I want to make it right. I want to testify at the trial. I want to tell everyone exactly what happened. Sarah was typing rapidly on her laptop. This is huge. This corroborates everything Maya said. It establishes that Victoria was conscious and deliberate in her decision to abandon hope. It destroys any defense based on postpartum depression or confusion. Will I be arrested? Catherine asked quietly. Possibly, Sarah said honestly. You did technically assist in hiding a pregnancy and may have violated medical reporting requirements. But if you cooperate fully, if you testify truthfully, I'll do everything I can to help you negotiate a deal with the prosecutor. You made mistakes, but you're trying to make them right. That counts for something. Catherine nodded, wiping her eyes. I'll do whatever it takes. I just want that baby to have justice. After Catherine left with Sarah to meet with the district attorney, Maya sat alone in the meeting room, processing everything she had just heard. Another piece of the puzzle had fallen into place. Another witness to support the truth of what had happened. Father Michael came in and sat beside her. That was quite a development. Everything is coming together, Maya said. All the truth is coming out. Victoria can't hide anymore. No, she can't. But Maya, you need to prepare yourself. The trial is going to be difficult. You're going to have to relive finding hope. You're going to have to face Victoria's lawyers trying to discredit you. It won't be easy. I know, Maya said, but I can handle it. I have to handle it for Hope. That evening, after Hope was asleep, Maya stood at her window looking out at the city lights. Somewhere out there, Victoria Whitmore was in a cell, waiting for her trial to begin. Somewhere out there, Richard Whitmore was in his mansion, alone with his regrets. Somewhere out there, Catherine Wells was preparing to destroy her own career to tell the truth. And here, in this small apartment, Maya Torres was building a life with a baby who wasn't biologically hers but was hers in every way that mattered. Maya's phone buzzed with a text from Sarah. Catherine's testimony is solid. The DA is thrilled. This trial just became a lot easier to win. Get some rest. Tomorrow we make history. Maya smiled and typed back, ready. She checked on Hope one more time, watching the baby sleep peacefully. In 1 week, Hope would be 4 months old. In 1 week, Victoria's trial would be underway. In 1 week, the whole world would hear the truth about what had happened in that alley 4 months ago. Maya climbed into bed, exhausted but hopeful. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, but she was ready to face them. She had come so far from the scared, homeless girl sleeping behind a dumpster. She had found strength she didn't know she had. She had built a family from nothing. She had turned the worst moment of her life into something beautiful. Her grandmother had been right. Choose kindness. Be brave. And somehow things work out. Maya fell asleep with a smile on her face, dreaming of Hope's future, of all the possibilities that lay ahead for both of them. Whatever tomorrow brought, they would face it together. And that was enough. The next morning arrived with unexpected chaos. Maya woke to her phone ringing insistently. It was Sarah, and she sounded breathless. Maya, turn on the news. Any channel. Now. Maya grabbed the remote and switched on the television, her heart pounding. Every channel was showing the same breaking news story. Stunning developments this morning in the Whitmore baby abandonment case. A news anchor was saying, Victoria Whitmore, scheduled to go on trial tomorrow, was found unresponsive in her cell early this morning. She's been rushed to the hospital. We're told she ingested an unknown substance. Her condition is currently listed as critical. Maya's hand flew to her mouth. Victoria had tried to kill herself rather than face trial. Is she going to survive? Maya asked Sarah, still on the phone. They don't know yet, Sarah said grimly. But Maya, this changes everything. If she dies, there won't be a trial. She'll never be held accountable for what she did. Maya looked over at Hope's crib, where the baby was just starting to wake up, making her early morning sounds. Whatever happened with Victoria, whatever the trial brought or didn't bring, Hope was safe. Hope was loved. Hope had a future. And that, Maya realized, was the real victory. Not punishing Victoria, not seeing justice done in a courtroom. The real victory was that a baby who had been thrown away was now thriving, cherished, and protected. Whatever happens, Maya said to Sarah, we've already won. Hope is alive and safe. That's what matters most. You're right, Sarah said softly. You're absolutely right. I'll call you when I know more about Victoria's condition. Maya hung up and went to Hope's crib, lifting the baby into her arms. Hope smiled up at her, that beautiful toothless smile that made everything worthwhile. Good morning, sweet girl, Maya whispered. Whatever happens today, whatever happens at the trial, you and I are going to be just fine. I promise. And Maya Torres, who had learned the hard way that promises were sacred, meant every word. Victoria Whitmore survived. The doctors pumped her stomach and stabilized her condition, but the suicide attempt had consequences. The trial was postponed for 2 weeks while Victoria recovered, and when it finally began, she looked like a shadow of the elegant woman who had sat so composed in the custody hearing months ago. Maya sat in the witness waiting room, her palms sweating despite the cool air conditioning. Agnes had agreed to watch Hope during the testimony, and Maya kept checking her phone for updates, even though she knew Agnes would call immediately if anything was wrong. Stop worrying, Sarah said gently, placing a hand on Maya's knee to stop it from bouncing nervously. Hope is fine. Agnes loves her almost as much as you do. Focus on what you need to do here. The courtroom was packed when Maya was finally called to testify. She walked to the witness stand on shaky legs, placed her hand on the Bible, and swore to tell the truth. Looking out at the gallery, she saw familiar faces. Father Michael and Agnes in the front row, offering encouraging smiles. Richard Whitmore sitting alone on the opposite side, his expression unreadable. And reporters, so many reporters, with their notebooks and recording devices, ready to capture every word. The prosecutor, a sharp woman in her 40s named District Attorney Jennifer Martinez, approached with a kind smile. Miss Torres, thank you for being here today. Can you tell the court what happened on the morning of June 15th? Maya took a deep breath and began her story. She described waking up in the alley, hearing the cry, finding Hope behind the dumpster. She talked about the letter, the money, the monogram blanket. She explained how she brought Hope to the church, how she tried to keep her safe. DA Martinez showed her photographs. Is this the blanket you found with the baby? Yes. And is this the baby carrier? Yes. Can you identify the baby in this photograph taken at the hospital after she was found? Maya looked at the picture of tiny Hope, just days old, and felt tears prick her eyes. Yes, that's Hope. And do you see the person who abandoned this baby in the courtroom today? Maya's eyes moved to Victoria Whitmore, sitting at the defense table between her lawyers. Victoria was staring down at her hands, refusing to meet Maya's gaze. Yes, Victoria Whitmore. DA Martinez nodded. Thank you. No further questions. Victoria's defense attorney, a stern man with cold eyes, stood for cross-examination. Miss Torres, you were homeless when you found this baby, correct? Yes. Living in an alley with no income, no resources? That's correct. And you found $20,000 in cash with this baby? Maya saw where he was going. Yes, I did. That's a lot of money for a homeless teenager. Weren't you tempted to take it? No, Maya said firmly. It wasn't mine. It was meant for whoever was going to care for the baby. But you ended up caring for the baby anyway. So in a sense, you got both the money and the baby. I didn't take the money, Maya said, her voice rising slightly. The police took it as evidence. I never touched it except to confirm it was there. You claim there was a letter with the baby. A letter that conveniently disappeared. How convenient for your story. I didn't make up the letter, Maya said. It was real. Victoria Whitmore wrote it. You can't prove that, can you? You have no physical evidence of this letter. The letter said she would destroy it. That's exactly what happened. The defense attorney smiled coldly. Or perhaps there never was a letter. Perhaps you saw an opportunity. Saw a wealthy baby in an expensive carrier with a lot of cash. And you took her, planning to extort money from the family. That's not true, Maya said, her hands gripping the edge of the witness stand. I saved her life. She was abandoned, left alone where anything could have happened to her. According to your story. But we only have your word for that, don't we? D.A. Martinez stood. Objection, Your Honor. Argumentative, and the defense is ignoring the testimony of Catherine Wells, the midwife, and Richard Whitmore himself, both of whom corroborate Miss Torres's account. Sustained, the judge said. Move on, counselor. The defense attorney tried a few more angles, but Maya held firm, answering each question calmly and truthfully, just as Sarah had taught her. Finally, he gave up and dismissed her. As Maya stepped down from the witness stand, she allowed herself to look directly at Victoria. For just a moment, their eyes met. Maya saw something there, buried beneath the fear and shame, regret maybe, or recognition of the truth that could no longer be hidden. Over the next 3 days, the prosecution built their case. Catherine Wells testified about Victoria's hidden pregnancy and her statements about getting rid of the baby. Richard Whitmore testified about his wife's lies and deception. The delivery driver testified about seeing a woman matching Victoria's description near the alley that morning. The dog walker testified about seeing Maya shortly after, looking distressed and carrying a baby. Medical experts testified about Hope's condition when she was found, confirming she had been left alone for at least an hour, possibly longer, in dangerous conditions. A forensics expert testified about the blanket and carrier, confirming they were expensive items that had been purchased by Victoria Whitmore. The defense tried to paint Victoria as a woman suffering from severe postpartum depression, a victim of her own mental illness. They brought in psychiatrists who talked about how mental illness can impair judgment, how Victoria wasn't in her right mind when she abandoned Hope. But D.A. Martinez dismantled that defense with precision. She pointed out that Victoria had hidden her pregnancy for months, demonstrating clear planning and forethought. She had paid Catherine Wells in cash, showing she understood she was doing something wrong. She had written a detailed letter explaining her actions, proving she was lucid and aware. And when Hope was found, Victoria had lied about it being a kidnapping, showing she knew abandoning the baby was a crime. This wasn't a woman in the grip of mental illness, D.A. Martinez argued in her closing statement. This was a woman making calculated choices to hide her affair, dispose of the inconvenient evidence of that affair, and then cover up her crime when she was caught. She chose her reputation over her daughter's life. That's not mental illness. That's criminal negligence and child endangerment. The jury deliberated for only 6 hours before returning with their verdict. Maya sat in the gallery with Sarah, Father Michael, and Agnes, holding her breath as the forewoman stood. On the count of child abandonment, we find the defendant guilty. On the count of child endangerment, we find the defendant guilty. On the count of filing a false police report, we find the defendant guilty. Victoria collapsed in her chair, sobbing. Her lawyers immediately began talking about appeals. But Maya felt only a deep sense of relief. Hope's story was now officially recognized. The truth had been spoken and validated. 2 weeks later, Victoria was sentenced to 5 years in prison. She would serve at least 3 before being eligible for parole. It wasn't as long as Maya thought she deserved, but it was something. It was accountability. That evening, Maya sat in her small apartment with Hope, now 5 months old, on her lap. The baby was fascinated by a colorful rattle Agnes had bought her, shaking it enthusiastically and giggling at the sound. "We did it," Maya whispered to Hope. "It's really over. No more court hearings, no more lawyers, no more fighting. It's just us now." Hope looked up at her and smiled, reaching a chubby hand to touch Maya's face. In that moment, Maya felt a peace she hadn't known since before her grandmother died. This was her family now. This perfect, beautiful baby who had come into her life in the most unexpected way. A knock at the door interrupted the moment. Maya opened it to find Richard Whitmore standing there, looking nervous. "I'm sorry to come unannounced," he said. "I just wanted to see how you both were doing after the trial." "We're okay," Maya said. "Come in." Richard sat carefully, watching Hope play. "I wanted to thank you," he said quietly, "for everything you've done for her, for fighting when it would have been easier to walk away, for giving her a chance at a real life." "You don't need to thank me," Maya said. "I love her. That's all there is to it." "I know you do. I can see it every time you look at her." Richard pulled an envelope from his pocket. "I've been thinking about the future. Hope is going to need things as she grows up. College fund, medical expenses, opportunities. The trust fund I set up covers basics, but I want to do more. I want to establish a larger fund that you can access as needed, no questions asked. Consider it my way of making sure Hope has every advantage in life." "Richard, you've already done so much. Please," he interrupted gently, "let me do this. I may not be her father, but I feel responsible for her. She exists because of my wife's choices, and she suffered because of those choices. Let me help make her future better." Maya looked down at Hope, then back at Richard. She saw genuine care in his eyes, genuine desire to help. "Okay," she said softly. "Thank you." Richard smiled, a real smile that reached his eyes for the first time since Maya had known him. "Thank you for letting me be part of her life, even in this small way." After Richard left, Maya stood at her window with Hope in her arms, looking out at the city as the sun set. 6 months ago, she had been sleeping in alleys, grieving her grandmother, feeling utterly alone in the world. Now she had a home, a purpose, and a daughter who depended on her. She thought about her grandmother, about all the lessons Rosa had taught her. Be kind even when it's hard. Be brave even when you're scared. Help others even when you have nothing to give. Maya had followed those lessons, and they had led her here, to this moment, to this baby, to this life she was building from nothing. "Your great-grandma Rosa would have loved you so much," Maya whispered to Hope. "She would have spoiled you rotten, but she also would have taught you the same things she taught me. To be strong, to be kind, to stand up for what's right, even when it's difficult." Hope yawned, getting sleepy. Maya carried her to the crib and laid her down gently, covering her with the soft blanket Agnes had knitted. "Sweet dreams, my little Hope," Maya said softly. "Tomorrow is a new day, and we're going to make it beautiful." As Maya turned off the light and closed the door, she felt her grandmother's presence like a warm embrace. Rosa would be proud of her, proud of the woman she was becoming, proud of the mother she had chosen to be. Maya had been a homeless girl who found an abandoned baby, but she had become so much more than that. She had become a protector, a fighter, a mother. She had shown courage that most people twice her age would never possess. And most importantly, she had proved that family isn't always about blood. Sometimes it's about choice, about love, about refusing to walk away when someone needs you. Maya climbed into her own bed, exhausted but content. Tomorrow she would wake up early with Hope. She would work at the restaurant. She would study for her classes. She would do the million small things that make up a life. But tonight she would rest. She had earned it. The homeless girl and the abandoned baby had both found what they needed most. They had found each other. They had found home. And that, Maya thought as she drifted off to sleep, was the most beautiful ending of all. Except it wasn't an ending. It was a beginning. The beginning of a life built on courage, kindness, and love. The beginning of Hope's story and Maya's story, intertwined forever. The beginning of everything that mattered. The end. Thank you for watching. If you found this story engaging, we invite you to share your thoughts in the comments below. Your perspective adds value to the conversation. To stay updated with future stories exploring themes of race, inequality, and the unexpected choices that shape lives, please consider subscribing to this channel. Your support helps us continue creating meaningful and thought-provoking content.